Good evening, and
Somebody needs to mute.
good evening, and are you guys hearing that?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. I don't know what that's going on. At any rate, welcome, welcome to the group tonight. We're going to chat about brightness and projectors and what all this means with HDR and SDR, and how many nits is good enough, and how many do you need, and what's it like to watch something at 400 nits or 700 nits. Some of the KC guys have had some experience with this now, including over at Ryan's room, Moltar on the forums, who's my regular partner on some of these little broadcasts. He didn't come to our most recent movie night, so we kind of just decided to go with the people who were on that movie night, but he'll be here next time as well. What we wanted to kind of talk about was Ryan can get as much as like 750 nits in his room with his projector. This Epson QL3000 can get 375 nits in my room, and I think, Grant, maybe you've been the exception where you perhaps haven't witnessed that 700 nits, but you saw 375 at my room, so you can kind of weigh in on that. And I think Tim and Ryan Kramer, I think you guys have both seen Ryan Charpenter's room with the 700 nits at full blast 100 board, just kind of as a fun thing. Where do we need to be? Like in 2025, is the 2000 lumens enough? And we're going to just kind of talk through that. What advantages, what disadvantages? Is it a game changer, or is it kind of a gimmick? Is Epson choosing the right path or not? And I'm not censoring you guys. I want you to give your honest opinion. If you hate it, say you hate it. If you love it, you love it. If there's pluses and minuses is where my head's at, then I'm going to list off both, because I do think there's advantages and disadvantages. So first off, how are you guys doing? We got Stitch One, Tim Miller, buddy of mine from the old days. Grant, same thing, buddy of mine from old days on the ABS forum. We've done sub shootouts and speaker shootouts for years and years. And Ryan Kramer, same thing, from 2011, fellas, right? Maybe 2012 for some of us.
Yeah.
Just kind of some of the local Kansas City home theater enthusiasts. So good to have you guys on board. Thanks for joining, Grant. I knew it was kind of up in the air. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, we launched, and all of a sudden he was on the line. I was like, hey, cool.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Ryan, you said you had some guests over in your room recently. You want to just like mention that and talk about that a little bit?
No, yeah. This is sort of like a warm up while people find out that you're actually streaming.
You had some guests over in your room recently. You want to
it's funny. It's one of those things where what ended up happening was
like a warm up
had
that you're actually
we're getting some echo.
it's funny. It's one of those things where what ended up happening was
I don't even know how to tell where it's coming from. Let's see.
We're getting some echo.
it's funny. It's one of those things where
Grant, I think it might be yours. Are you on your phone? Oh, you're muted now.
Yeah, he's muted. El Muto.
Unmute yourself, Grant.
He doesn't know. I think he's lagged on the stream behind us, and he's going to find out what we just said in a minute or two.
Oh, okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't had that happen before. He might be on a
I do.
I'm getting like double audio streams, guys. I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay.
But I can barely understand what you're saying because I'm getting two audio streams at once, 5 seconds.
Do you have a YouTube thing going too?
But I can barely understand what you're saying because I'm getting two audio streams at once, 5 seconds.
Do you have a YouTube thing going too?
What's happening? Hang on, let me check. That's probably what's going on.
This is the only browser window I have open.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. More better now.
More better. More better. Oh, that is better. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank God. All right. My head hurts now already.
All right.
That was stressful.
Oh, man.
Okay.
For the full start. Here we go. Now we're ready.
Yeah. It's like on one hand, when you're with the other Ryan, it always starts late, but it more or less is working out the gate. Whereas this one, we start on time, but you never know what you're going to get. So, no, it was interesting. I had some people over. My brother, I have a twin that runs around the world. He looks a lot like I do, as twins are ought to. And he said, hey, he's part of this group that shoots fireworks in the Kansas City area. And when I say shoot fireworks, I mean like they'll buy shipping containers from China and send them over, or like shells up to like 16 inches, and the government will check on you from time to time, and you have to take classes and get licenses, all that good stuff. So anyway, so they like their boom, boom, booms. And I said, hey, here, my brother is always looking for something new for them to try in the hobby, right, or to think about. And he said, hey, once upon a time, you played me some firework recordings. How about I have them over? We can watch some videos, listen to some recordings, and give that a shot. And so what I did was I took it as an opportunity to talk about how crazy important dynamic range is for realism, is basically what it was about. Because and this is rudimentary for some people on the stream, but for those of you who have never looked into it, the average level or dynamic range in like a song, like let's say on a CD, you'd be lucky to have, like your average dynamic range inside of a song might be 7 to 9 dB, right? For like the peaks and the valleys. And then if you're really lucky, you might find something that's like, say, the Atmos recordings that you'll find on Apple Music, where they're required as part of the standard to have a higher dynamic range.
Yeah.
You'll be lucky, maybe the 15 range or something like that. Not like a fade in, fade out, of course, but like the average as it's going through. But in this case, I had some recordings from, I believe it was Danley Sound Labs. There, you can find the post online, but the links are long since dead. And I just so happened the recordings for them, and they have a 40 dB dynamic range with a 70 dB peak dynamic range on those recordings. And with those kinds of recordings, they're dangerous on the wrong system, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be very careful as you slowly raise the volume to make sure that you aren't going to be getting bad sounds. But that's what I talked about. I said, all right, check this out on a normal recording and how, it sounds a little bit punchy, but mostly flat and kind of, it doesn't sound anything like it does in real life. It doesn't have that very almost percussive shockwave sound, shotgun kind of blast that hits you. And to that point, normally when I watch a movie, reference on my receiver calibrated, that's supposed to be roughly around the 80 mark is where that appears. How I have it set up, it's not set to 0, it's set to 80 on my Arkham. And let's see. And oftentimes I'll watch a movie even 5 dB below that. So it's like 75 or something like that. These recordings, when we were listening to them back, I had it cranked up to 96, 97, almost the full volume the receiver could go, right? And it really has an extremely strong, visceral, percussive sound to it. Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of was like a light bulb moment for a lot of them, right? So that was one of the things that we discussed. Another thing that I gave them an example of how important dynamic range. If anybody in chat's never ran into the loudness wars before, look up the Garage Hero Metallica story. Mm-hmm. For those who aren't familiar with that, when Metallica released their album Death Magnetic, I think is what it was, it had so little dynamic range. If you brought that sound waveform into like a DAW or a sound editing program, it looked like almost like a solid brick going across with no peaks or valleys whatsoever. So people found the Guitar Hero version, which did not get mastered the same way and just had the original audio stems on it, played it note perfect, captured it, and then put it out on sites for people to download. And they got a much better quality recording as a result. It didn't sound like it was in mono, right? So that ends up being yet another way to like point to people. It's like, hey, you guys complain about how you're always reaching for the volume knob because the explosion's so much louder than everything else. But by the same token, if you flatten that too much, all the realism goes away. All the excitement that that we're looking for, especially in movies, it destroys a lot of that. So it was this fun sort of like overlap activity for something like that. And then in addition to that, the second half of it, I just ran through a barrage of typical demos just because they aren't like into this particular hobby, but I'm always up for, the evangelizing side of the hobby, let's call it, right? It's like trying to get somebody else hooked on the supply. Well, it was cool.
Grant, have you had people over since we've talked last? Any visitors?
No, not since we talked last. I'll echo what Ryan said, though. It's fun to get people hooked on the hobby and show them something that they've never seen or heard before, and the realization that they could have that in their own home. And the dynamic range is a big one, right? A lot of people haven't really heard, like some of us have JTR speakers, for example, and
Mhm.
that they do dynamics very well. And
Mhm.
it's even if you had a speaker that you thought did it pretty well in the past, you don't know what you don't know until you try it sometimes. And I remember thinking I had pretty great dynamic range in my old clip setup in here, and then you hear something different and it changes your mind. So
Yeah.
it's worth experimenting with for sure.
Yeah. Tim, looks like your room's coming along nicely. We've seen some pictures along the way on the forums and through our text chats. Getting to
Yeah.
that final stretch.
We're getting close. It's to the stage where any little setback is super frustrating because you're like, I'm so close.
Are those just speaker wires hanging from the wall that I see? Like is that your ceiling speaker wires that are hanging
Yeah,
down?
those are the ceiling speaker wires you're seeing up there. Yeah.
Well, your
There's
lighting is looking
they're all
good.
around me. Yeah, lights are coming around. I finally have control over the overhead lights, which is nice. I have most of the ambient lights done except for one because of the door, which is almost done. It should have been done, but I screwed up. I had to redo it.
Cool.
Just the trim. I said I did it, and then we both agreed that it didn't look good, and so we came with a better design for it. So I was rushing to cut down a piece just for that before we started tonight. So that's where we're at. I can go more in depth later if we want to go into topics, but
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. For our part, in my theater, we've had a lot of people over here lately, like especially even families and so forth. When we got a little break from some of the sports, the kids wanted to invite a bunch of their kids' friends from church over, so the families would come over for dinner. We've had quite a few people through here in just the last month or so, and we've watched quite a few different movies. And just like we did the other night, not quite like we did the night. A lot of times I'll switch out the projectors, and so that's kind of one of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight. I have a JVC NZ500 and I have this Epson QL3000, and we'll switch it out mid movie and let people watch on both sides. And there's been mixed responses from multiple families on that, on which ones they like better. There's not a universal acclaim there. Despite what you might think one way or the other, it's just not the way it happens. So even among family members, like the husband and wife will disagree and they'll kind of make a little fun little spat about which one they like better. It's pretty interesting to hear and listen to. It doesn't take long. About the time you have a bathroom break for the kids or whatever, just swap the HDMI cables and pop it ready. It's good to go. So that's been fun. We've done quite a bit of that. So most recently, and the very example that we're going to talk about tonight was you guys came over this last weekend and we watched Jurassic Park in totality in SDR on a Blu-ray, and then we watched the first, I don't know, third or half of Dune 2 before we kind of had to end the night. So you got a chance to, and that was in 4K HDR on disc. So you got a chance to see how the HDR works. You got a chance to see how the SDR works. In that case, we didn't switch to the JVC for, I don't know, what was my intent. It just didn't end up happening. So you guys are all familiar with JVC. Most of you have owned JVC in the past or have JVC now. So you have that in your back pocket. Let's talk about it. So Jurassic Park, I had that projector, unfortunately, in dynamic mode, which I didn't even intend to do and didn't realize I was in until the end of the movie when I went to switch into Dune 2. So the reds were a little hot, the greens were a little hot on Jurassic Park and SDR, but overall it wasn't like outstandingly bad as far as the colors. It's not egregious, but it is more vivid than I would normally have chosen. I usually choose cinema mode. I was playing with stuff beforehand. I didn't realize I still had it on dynamic mode. Fault to me. Nevertheless, I still enjoyed the movie, and I think you guys did too. I'll speak for Sheldon, at least in part. When I asked if we wanted to switch out to the JVC about halfway through, he has a JVC NZ500, and he didn't say anything. He loves his JVC NZ500, and I think he'd keep it over the QL3000. So I'm not saying anything other than that. But he did say, like, I don't want to switch it. I'm enjoying this bright movie, like watching it like I haven't watched it before, because it's kind of a different experience. It's a unique experience. So I'll take a break and let you guys talk about what you thought. Tim, what were your thoughts on the Jurassic Park viewing of the QL3000? Oh, and for what it's worth, frame interpolation was on low, which I know you guys hate, but that was what we were showcasing.
For the record, I don't mind it. It just
And then
Hey, let's have Ryan go
But
first.
those
Ryan's
two.
All right, so Tim, go ahead.
I was going to let Ryan go first. I think I'd like to hear his take on it for mine.
Okay.
Fine. All right, here we go. First off, it's super content dependent, but a movie like Jurassic Park, aka lit in in 1993, I think is when it was released. A lot of people think of that movie as, oh, it's got all those night scenes. Not compared to modern films, it doesn't. You'll go back and you'll almost have almost the same reaction as you might going back to, say, like when you would watch a Western from the 1950s and 1960s. When you would watch those in the 1990s, you'd be like, oh, well, this is just filmed at daylight and then cranked down. That movie's not quite that bad, but it definitely feels soundstage dark, if that makes sense, right? So all that to say, it played into the strengths of the projector in my mind. And the other thing about it too is 340 nits, 345. Is that what you said it's running at?
375 is what it is at 100% laser where we were watching.
Okay.
Yeah.
For a movie like that, it doesn't feel like it at all.
Mhm.
Not really. I mean, you just sort of get used to it and you almost forget about it fairly quickly, except for, a few scenes here and there. Contrasting that, say, to Dune, where I flinched, like viscerally flinched a few times when it switched. And that had everything to do with the design of the movie and the lighting of the movie, where your eyes had time to like, okay, this is a dark scene, this is a dark scene, this is a dark scene, and bam, we're in the desert. And you do this just a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Which kind of sort of, I would think, is a little bit actually, it feels like part of it doesn't take me out of the movie, something like that. It feels like it's supposed to be part of what you're actually experiencing. Like, hello, you're in the desert, don't forget. That kind of reaction. So all of that to say, other than the greens, which were a little torchy, like you said, it didn't like pull me out of it at all. Oh, and one more thing. Brightness definitely exasperates grain, for sure.
Yes.
So I'll throw that one out there too.
I'm gonna opine on that, and I invite you guys to do the same thing. If there's something that's brought up that you want to talk on, go ahead. In my case, well, the first time I watched Jurassic Park was a few weeks ago, in years and years, and I watched it on the QL3000 in cinema mode, which was my intent the other night. And the very first time it goes to that scene where they're outside and he's digging the bones and they're on the work site, that was the same impression for me. Like, wow, okay, I'm in the desert. There's the sun, the bright sky.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's bright like it should be. It's daylight like it should be. And to your point where it's not filmed super dark, that's absolutely true. We watched Jaws recently. Anytime there's a night scene in Jaws, the actors' faces are lit in really well, and there's kind of the same sort of effect going on in Jurassic Park. Maybe not to the same extent, but that's sort of phased away where now they don't light the actors' faces intentionally, and it's just very dark scene on modern movies. But in the old days, like what is Jurassic Park's 30 years old or so, in that era, you didn't really have a dark scene, and so the QL3000 never really has any native contrast issues in my mind watching it. Like when I was watching it in cinema mode, I thought it was fantastic. And that brightness really adds to the whole effect, in my opinion. So for that movie, that opinion, not universally that opinion, but for that movie, that opinion. Okay. Ryan, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I might make an additional thing to maybe talk about later, and that's just sort of like, I feel like dark scenes in modern movies are a little bit kind of like dynamic range in the audio for audiences. It's a talking point that if you just look on, out in the real world away from enthusiasts, they complain about that one where they're like, I can't see a darn thing going on in this movie, whatnot. The whole eighth season of Game of Thrones is like that kind of mindset where, oh, just because you can see it on your studio monitor does, to borrow a line from Jurassic Park, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? So I think there's a little bit of that too. I almost wish when it came to movies, they could sort of find something in between the two, as opposed to going it's almost like dreamy, smeary dark in a lot of scenes nowadays, just because they have like the crazy amount of f-stops in their camera and higher bit depth for their color spaces. Now they have this new toy that maybe they're wielding with a little too much power.
Right.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, you kind of made me chuckle when you were talking about the Metallica album and the lack of dynamics, because kind of the topic of the night is that QL3000, and I kind of feel the same way about it as I do that album. Is you lose some of that lower end dynamics that I like. I like.
Did you notice? Did you feel like you noticed it in the Jurassic Park, or have you watched it recently?
I haven't seen it in a little while, but that's a movie I'm very, very familiar with. Like I was calling out
Mhm.
to you, like certain things that are mistakes in the movie.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, like when it very first starts and like once they get there and stuff, and the movie really starts taking place, and like they're going to the raptor cage, I was like,
Mhm.
oh, this the gray and stuff of the cement and the walls and the cage and all that stuff was like, this is very bright.
Mhm.
Like that's when you first like for me, it starts like this is and with the motion smoothing turned on, it kind of it changes the feel for me of the movie completely. I
Mhm.
absolutely hate your motion interpolation, but that's a different topic. We did finally turn it off during Dune for a little while, and that made me a little happier.
Yeah.
And Grant's nodding emphatically in the corner down there. Don't think he isn't.
Grant,
Yeah.
what's your perspective?
Um. Well, so your question was, what do I think about the Jurassic Park
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about them
version of
individually.
it? And
Mhm.
if we're just talking about that, that's a little unfair, I think, to the Epson.
Mhm.
I mean, it's unfair because first of all, you had motion interpolation on, and it really kills it for me. I mean,
Mhm.
it hurts the entire experience for me, and it doesn't look like film. It takes me out of it. It looks like a daytime soap opera. It looks like I'm watching the news. Um, I absolutely hate it, and I'm sorry, I really, really hate
No,
it.
that's fine. It's
He said you
polarizing
could
because
be
I
honest.
like it.
Bring it, man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not.
No censor.
Here's the thing. That's nothing to do with the Epson.
Mhm.
That's just what we
Well,
want.
it's their algorithm for frame interpolation, so in a way,
Yeah, I
it does have to
suppose.
do with it.
Yeah, in a way, I suppose there are less egregious forms of it, and I have one on my JVC that on
Mhm.
CMD low is not as bad. I've used it before actually and been okay with it. For example, um, which is something
So,
I mentioned. To be
I
fair, yeah,
wanna I wanna insert right there that this is all a matter of how we see too,
yeah,
because to my eyes, I don't like JVC CMD. I like the Epsons and frame interpolation. So, like, there's no right or wrong here. It's
right,
perception. I don't doubt that you feel that way, but I feel the other way. So just to balance that out.
yeah, and the
To
other
add
thing
to
is,
that, it, yeah, never mind, never mind. Go ahead, Grant.
well, the other thing that's not fair is you had it in dynamic mode, which I did
Mhm.
not like, and I it looked off to me the whole time. It
Mhm.
didn't look realistic. It didn't look filmic, um, and I it looked very odd and different in a way that I did not appreciate. Um, and then the other thing was it brought out a lot of extra noise. I would call it. There was a lot of
The film
noise in the
grain,
image. What?
the film grain.
Yeah, more than that, even. It kind of brought, I mean, maybe it did something weird with the film grain. Maybe it was some kind of digital noise. I don't know what it was doing, but it definitely had a look to it that was artificial, and I don't know what that was. But so the thing is, I definitely knew I didn't prefer it to
Mhm.
what I had remembered from my like last viewing of Jurassic Park. Most of those things are completely gone when we watched Dune, and we took it out of dynamic mode. We took the motion interpolation off, and all of
Mhm.
a sudden, and we had a good pristine 4K image to input to it, and
Mhm.
then I was very much enjoying it.
Mhm.
It very much, and I loved the bright scenes. First of all, the brightness for a projector, it's very welcome. I'm always looking for more brightness. Absolutely, I'm not anti-brightness. I on my OLED, I'm like, "Oh, maybe I should upgrade this year because more brightness, etcetera." But and this is the crux of it for me, I'll just get right to it.
Sure.
Okay. This is a game of compromises,
Yes.
and you gonna choose your own.
Yes.
And for me, I have, you guys, most of you guys know, I have my sitting here in my room with my projector right here, and I open this door right there, and I've got my OLED, and I can look at them both simultaneously.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what would you rather have? Would you
Hmm.
rather have the black, inky blacks and unbelievable contrast of a pristine 3D image? It pops. It looks like you could touch it. Or would I
Hmm.
rather have more brightness?
Hmm.
It's just, it's not even, it's not something I have to think about for more than like 1 second. When you
Hmm.
look at them both side by side, I don't have to think about it. It's not like tormenting me. It's like, duh.
Hmm.
It's that easy. I know it's different for different people. One advantage I have too is my screen is on the small side. So it's not that difficult to light up for. I have a JVC NZ8. I have a
Does it-
110-inch wide, ultra wide screen.
Okay.
That's not that big to light. That's not difficult to light. I'm probably getting 150 nits, something like that. In HDR, give or take, and I'm okay with it. But what would I rather have? More brightness or blacker blacks? I look at my projector image and I am not happy with it. I do not think the black floor is even close to good enough. It's just an inherently flawed technology, and I would take blacker blacks any day. I could never justify going up in that range,
Hmm.
cutting off those blacks and making them gray just to get a little extra brightness.
Hmm.
That to me is not a fair trade-off. And I
Hmm.
mean, and I know everybody feels differently about this, and we were at Ryan's, everybody felt differently about that, and the projector shootout was really interesting. Um, I mean, I could go on and on. I won't dominate the conversation, but, uh, just a little bit about Dune real quick, 'cause
Before you do that, let's come back to that if it's okay.
okay,
I
sure.
think that's a great segue into that projector meet that we had, where we had the Sony Bravia 9 and the QL7000, which is twice as bright as this QL3000, and then the JVC NZ900. And we've already talked about this in one of the streams that was kind of a while back. It didn't involve the same group of people, so I think it might be worth like just talking about that briefly, kind of reprise what happened and what the observations were. And it is interesting because we had what 11 or 13 guys there. I don't remember, a dozen guys.
Yeah, it
Um,
was like 10 or 11 at its peak.
and it was really kind of a split decision. I mean, you had guys in there that were very strongly adamant about the JVC, and equally people that were adamant about the Epson. One of the guys that came there to actually see if he wanted to buy the Epson or was going to buy the Epson, and he left like very happy he had picked the Epson. And like we purposely picked clips and showcased clips that would show the strengths of both of them and the weaknesses of both of them, and just let the chips fall where they were. And subjective preferences weren't uniform. That actually surprised me a little bit because I think to this day, the NZ900 at M-Wave, just and the 2024 M-Wave. Did you guys see that on the 8K source material at M-Wave in that room?
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
was the best projected image I've ever seen.
I would still pick that as the best projected image I had ever seen as well. Something about it hit a very good Goldilocks zone of just punchy enough that you can appreciate. You could tell that it was HDR, but not in a gimmicky way. Only in that the thing about HDR and projectors, and what a lot of the more purists will tell you right away, is if you don't have the a high enough contrast ratio to play within, it negates a lot of the advantages of HDR, which is true. Which is true on the face of it for sure, right? Like if you, um, it throws out the fact that you're playing with, we're playing with HDR, we're playing with 10-bit color spaces. Literally, you're playing with more granular steps. Like a lot of people don't realize that the color space, like for example, like Rec 2020 or Rec 709, you can have 4-bit, 8-bit, 2-bit, 1-bit. It'll just simply be not enough steps to want to even bother, right? So like I think 8-bit is roughly 8-bit per channel is roughly 16.7 million steps to play with. You'd think you go up to 10-bit and that's that's only 2 bits more. How much can that possibly be? Well, it's a lot. You go from the millions to the billions section, right? So that's a lot more steps to play with. So that's why you can have like a lot less banding in your dark scenes and stuff like that. So if you have a projector that can get super bright, and I'll use a more extreme example, like those cinema projectors that we've had for years, that like Barco's, where they're a DLP chip, single DLP chip, and they're playing with maybe 1200 to 1, 1500 to 1 contrast ratios tops, they'll never be able to do anything remotely satisfying in HDR because of the fact that they don't have those granular steps to play with inside that dynamic range in the first place. They have to cap the top or the bottom somewhere, and everything gets squeezed so badly that it feels like you're back to SDR again in the first place.
Ryan, can I have you move to the side a little bit so your face is out of those chat comments? Like, other way.
Yeah, get right into the chat comments. That's great.
More.
This way?
Yeah.
Do you not see the comments? Now my face is over the chat comments where I'm at.
Is that, what do you guys see?
Fine.
Really?
Yeah.
I can see what happens when I check the YouTube stream. Not that it matters.
It's probably better to pull it up.
Do they really want to see me? That's the real question.
You're like,
I can turn my camera off and they'll be like, oh, thank God.
Well, okay. So to continue that thought, and thank you for elaborating on your thought there. Having seen that NZ900 at that M-Wave, I was just thinking like, this is going to kind of be a blowout. Like I saw the QL3000 in my room and at Ryan's house on his screen. And I knew that it was a plenty neat projector, but I just had that NZ900 image in my mind thinking that's unbeatable. When we went to Chirpy's room and we did that 200, in my perspective, I liked the QL7000 better, which really kind of shocked me, frankly. When I had the QL7000 at my house, I was blown away by it to the point that I wanted to buy something in that field and Tim came over and spent an evening with me and we were going through demo clips. That brightness, I'm like a moth to the flame on that. That brightness is its own draw. And there is content, to Grant's point, there is content where you wish like, all right, this doesn't look as dark as I know it should. At the same time, the whites and the grays and stuff are so pure. And literally, that QL7000 was 3 times brighter than the JVC and the Sony, the flagship JVC and Sony. When we had those at Ryan Charpentier's room, when we were playing them side by side, we put those at 100% brightness and the QL7000 at 30% brightness, and the QL7000 was still brighter. So literally 3 times the brightness, to where it makes, in a solo, no one's ever going to think the Sony Bravia 9 or the JVC NZ900 is like kind of dingy or sort of like lacking bright whites. You're not going to think that if it's by itself. But when you watch it next to something that's 3 times brighter, all of a sudden the whites look kind of like gray and not impactful and not bright. So I brought this up before. I'll bring it up again as an example. In the Secret Level streaming show on Amazon, there's an intro there that has kind of a black and white. It's a black background and it has white flares, if you will, kind of like 3D artwork that's flying all over the place to bass music. It's a pretty neat intro. On a JVC or an Epson that's not these QL series, it's a neat intro, but it doesn't really spark your interest. On that QL7000 in my room, it's close to 700 nits in my room, maybe even 750 in that realm. That was something that's like unforgettable. And now I want to chase that because that white was searing. It was searing like an LED strip or something, or a giant OLED without the blacks, like just bright. In fact, even that projector, the QL7000, even the QL3000, when I switched from that to my OLED that I'm sitting in front of right now, that QL3000, that QL7000 is brighter than my OLED in default settings. So there's that. It just doesn't have the blacks. And anyway, all that to say, I was surprised it wasn't a blowout. I fully expected that to be a blowout for the JVC NZ900, and it just wasn't by the subjective comments and preferences that were shown there. Now, even on this stream, the 4 of us are probably split 50-50, I assume, to some degree.
Yeah.
And some of us stronger than others, perhaps. But I think Grant and Tim both preferred the NZ900, and Ryan might have been middling or maybe leaning one way or the other because of that giant screen. But I preferred the QL7000 on probably 85% of the content, and Grant would have said 100% of the content for JVC, I think. So
100% strong.
That is strong.
Not
Maybe the
not
Planet
100%.
Earth, you might on some. I think that was like the nature photography, let's call it, type material might stand a pretty good chance, or some animated content.
do you remember specifically what you liked better or worse that kind of surprised you? Like, I remember the Puss in Boots scene, that sequence there on the JVC NZ900 looked better to me, which I was kind of surprised on because, like I said, it was probably 85% to me the where I preferred the QL7000, and that's animated content, and I would have assumed, like, obviously that would go to Epson, like that would have been my ingoing thought, and that wasn't the case. I preferred the NZ900 on that Puss in Boots trip because of the dynamic range. There was really black content in there, and it showed up better on the NZ900, I think. That particular scene. Like, there's some surprises. Bottom line, there's some surprises in that for me too, even on the content choices that I picked.
All
I don't know
know
on
is that
content. I kind of want to jump in and just. So what I was going to say earlier was that I just don't really like frame interpolation at all on either JVC or Epson. And then like for JVC, for me, I like the dark contrast and stuff. There's a lot of things I don't like still on JVC, and I think they really need to up their game on their color gamut on like adding to it because it is lacking. Like when you go into your Apple TV remote stuff, the main menu for it, it doesn't pop. It doesn't look as vibrant as it should. And so I would like to see them do more in that space and stuff. So like ideally something in between. I still want those inky blacks because even when we were using the 7000 at your house before we did the meet, as soon as we went back to your LS 12000, I was like, man, if they could just get that brightness with that level of contrast, which isn't known for being a contrasty projector or anything, they would have a real winner in my book. It's just it's a step too far with the gray level that it has instead of black levels.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything to add on that, Grant or Ryan, or should we move on to Dune 2 discussion?
Well, about the projector shootout, just real quick, the screen at M-Wave, I don't know the size on it, but it was a nice Stewart.
160. I know that because I had looked it up myself for the same question.
and
The
it was a
difference
solid.
between
It was not
160 and
transparent.
200 is a lot. Like that's asking to light up a great deal more surface area, right? That's a lot more surface area. 160 to 200. I'm not surprised we saw some differences there. I'll also add that the the NZ900 in many scenes, because I went straight home and I turned on my JVC because I wanted to see how it looked.
Mm-hmm.
Many of those scenes looked better on mine, and mine just an NZ8 than at Ryan's.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it just on a 200-inch screen ran out of brightness. I don't know if it was a calibration issue because something also that you pointed out, Jonathan, was that secret level. There was a scene where the soldier has like some blood ran down his face, and the blood didn't have the color like popping red on the JVC. And I was like, gosh, I wonder is that true? Is that true on mine too? Well, thank God, no. It's red. It looks fantastic on my projector. So I you got to call some of that into question, like what we saw there. If it was just the size of the screen, if it was a calibration issue, I don't know. But I can tell you this: it doesn't look anything like that on my screen. So I don't want anybody to go out and buy or not buy based on that. Just throwing it out there. And we can move on to Dune.
No, I think that's good. I think that's good to talk about.
And we actually, I remember, Jonathan, we went straight upstairs at Sheldon's after we watched something at his house to check the blood on his OLED too, if I'm not mistaken, to double check that. And by my recollection, it was closer to what it looked like on the Epson at my place and what it looked like at Grant's on his JVC. And I think it's just, Yeah, and maybe, yeah, sure, it could, you could attribute it, some of it, to the calibration. It was a pretty quick calibration for all the projectors that day. But I think part of it is just, the classic quandary of, yeah, you're running out of brightness on a very large screen, and is your trade-off going to be on immersion, or is your trade-off going to be a higher quality image at a smaller size? And that's an impossible decision, or I shouldn't say impossible decision. That shouldn't be a decision somebody else except for your own brain makes, because it isn't possible otherwise. I
Right.
think it's not a smart thing on some. Sometimes we talk to a dealer, or we talk to a calibrator, or we talk to our friends, and we make the mistake that, it's like, oh well, they're not telling me learned dogma, or preferential dogma. This is just truth.
Right.
A lot of people make that the assumption when they're given quote unquote advice, but it's really not the case.
And just real quick, I would say that going away from that that get together, I was fully behind, like, for your room with that big screen, you gotta go bright, because the
Because it's
JVCs
not
aren't
even that bright by the time I'm done with it. Well, it's still bright, but not as bright.
For what it's worth, Grant, I've done that same secret level scene on my NZ500 and the QL3000, and I prefer the QL3000 rendering of that Warhammer 40,000 scene. That's a fantastic scene. But for the same reasons that I preferred it at Chirpy's house, the red is more vibrant, and the colors are more vibrant, and the brights are more vibrant. Yes, the JVC is darker, but I think my JVC struggles a little bit in my room on my screen size compared to your JVC on yours, because I got the base model, and you've got a mid model on a smaller screen. So I think you're getting some of that I'm losing. That's not to say I don't like the NZ500. I love it for certain things, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Like, there's
And he has
certain
a
movies
blacked
I
out
will just
front end to his
absolutely turn
room.
on the NZ500. Go ahead, Tim.
I said, and he has a blacked out front end to his room. Does help.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it helps a lot. I think it changes the your appreciation of a certain projector and enhances the black floor and all that. But I wanted to add just real quick to the size thing, because I have a smaller screen, like we said, and after I went home. I don't know if it's a good. I'll go ahead and talk about this. I came home and I popped in Jurassic Park on my own projector to see what it was like. First of all, I watched the 4K version for a few minutes. I told Tim this actually, and it was like night and day difference. Like, okay, that's impossible. It's that stark of a difference, because I mean. So then I tracked down my Blu-ray copy of Jurassic Park to make it a fair fight. I watched that this evening just before this stream, just to make sure I had a realistic comparison
Good on
between
you,
the
sir.
two. And brightness was same to my recollection, but we should do this at my place just to see what you think about it
Sure.
on my screen, and who knows what the differences are between the NZ500 and NZ. I don't know, but that noise that I was talking about, whatever it is, it looks artificial. It looks kind of digital. It almost looks like it takes the film grain or something. It just does something strange with it. And I don't know what that is, but I didn't like it. And maybe you guys didn't see that like I was seeing that.
I saw it.
I would suppose a supposition might be your reaction to film grain with frame interpolation on top of it is a
That's what I
possibility.
have.
Because
Is that the same
that's
one you have, the
probably
3-disc collection?
Yeah, mine's almost.
Because sometimes there's different masterings on things.
Well, actually, that's mine. It's a little different.
Well, this is the inside, so that's the outside case. We're probably looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, is yours a steel book?
No, it's not steel.
No. Mine's a little different than yours. Mine has the 3D versions in it too and stuff. But I mean, anyway, it does look different on the JVC. And
I don't doubt it. Sure.
And it looks more natural and cohesive. It looks like a film that's more intact, and it has like appropriate colors. Now look, duh. Of course it has more appropriate colors. You had it in dynamic range, for crying out loud. Like, like that's not shocking. If I couldn't notice that between the two projectors, I shouldn't be here talking about
Mhm.
my preference because I couldn't tell dynamic versus natural. I mean, like, come on.
Mhm.
So, but yes, there's a difference, and I still would not choose the Epson over the JVC for Jurassic Park. Now, I've spent enough time dogging the Epson. Let's move on to June so I can say something good about it.
I don't mind. I mean, that's I think what we're here to talk about because there's
Well, and it's
there's
also good
chemistry.
for, for other people to understand the context of things that they might not think about otherwise. It's not always just the projectors. It could literally be, oh, hey, you flip these 3 switches and all of a sudden somebody
Yeah.
might be, on board for this projector as a solution versus that one. So it's good to talk about these type of different nuances and how they can viscerally affect things for the users.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, just a few settings on, can change things quite a bit. Like you're talking about menus, Tim, and I've had the you can have this HDR setting on auto or on wide on
Mhm.
some of these JVCs, right? And if you put it on this wide setting, it gets a lot brighter, but you do lose some of the black floor. But man, those menus pop. And it was a little bit hard for me to go back and like turn it off because of the menu. But then, of course, if I look at real world content, then I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I get it. Why I probably overall prefer to lose the brightness on it, because it looks a little more natural in real world content. However, it's a compromise. Like I was saying, it's just not like I don't have the perfect projector at all. I'm unhappy with it a lot. It doesn't exist. It's just I want a lot more out of my JVC that I'm getting from it right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And what's interesting with what you just said is that when we're comparing, Jonathan and I were comparing the NP5 to the NZ500, because I was looking at upgrading mine to that. So we put them both in his room together, and we were playing with that wide and normal mode quite a bit. And my takeaway from it was like after you get used to either one of them, after about 5 to 10 minutes, you kind of get used to it. And I will say, like if you're going fast back and forth, the wide having that extra color instantly pulls you in, that moth to that flame thing, like Jonathan was saying. The thing is like the longer I watched it though, the less I liked the. You can get used to both of them. Don't get me wrong. And if you need the extra brightness, I don't think that's a bad way to go. But the longer I watch wide, the more I appreciated the normal mode, and so I do like the normal mode a little bit more because it doesn't quite have that overly. I guess it's overly saturated, or like the colors are just a little bit too far to the point where it makes me feel like it looks unnatural. And so,
It
but
does.
the thing is, it's very easy to just get swept up into that and just let it go. And it's a good picture. I still like that as well. Like we were playing with it quite a bit. Like which mode do I actually prefer? It was kind of one of those gut check kind of things of like, do I actually prefer it this way? And the longer I play with it, the more I was like, yeah, I don't think wide is for me.
So there's a comment here that I want to bring to the forefront. I'm not watching these comments, guys. If you've been commenting, we'll come back and try to catch up on them in a minute. But this is on point. Steven says if we had a 6,000 lumen JVC with the current contrast levels, this is no longer a conversation. I agree in full, and I think everybody here would agree in full. Like
That would be
that would be
Chris
a
4K 15 with a high contrast lens. Might get you a
remarkable
little
option.
closer.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But something like that doesn't exist right now until you
no.
get into the 70, 80, $90,000 range, right? Like the one that was in the Grimani room that was 10,000 contrast, native contrast. I don't know how
Yeah,
many
that was the
lumens.
model I just said. It was exactly that with a high contrast lens. It was that.
So was it higher than 10,000 then because of the high contrast lens, or was that where it was at? Because I remember hearing that stat there.
Are you talking? Okay, when you say 10,000, you're talking about
Native contrast.
I don't even think it was quite. I could be wrong. I don't even think it was quite that high. Because there's also another version of the high contrast lens for that one floating around out there. Let's see here. I can't remember if it's Absolute AV. The outfit out of Florida, they have a high contrast version for some of those Christies as well. it's not the same as the stock high contrast lens that Christie also sells. And you can get even higher contrast ratio beyond that, which knocks down, of course, the brightness even farther still, but it gets it to uh, um, um, let's see here. I think it knocks it down to like the 7,000 lumen range. I'd have to check, but there's a couple different levels of that you can climb up. But it's funny. I think that reminds me actually of a text chat where Jonathan was over there pining for his quote unquote perfect projector, in the sense that, what's reasonably, possible in the near future. And as he was sort of like combining the brightness of the projector he has right now, you would take a little bit more contrast, not necessarily have to be as much as the JVC, but maybe like a 5,000 to 1 kind of thing, with at the very least is that threshold you were talking about, I think.
Yeah.
And it was almost like you were describing a perfectly aligned, never goes out of convergence, double stack 12,000, if you could get such a thing.
Yeah. I do think, to that point, if they release like a QL3000 version 2, QL7000 version 2, or whatever the numbers they come up with, like in 3 years, and they put the ultra black polarizers in there that come with the LS12000, I think that'll be a nice step up, because it'll jump from 3,000 to 1 contrast ratio area to 5,000 to 1 contrast ratio area. And like Tim was saying, there is a difference between the LS12000 contrast and the QL3000 contrast. The QL3000 contrast is in line with, and probably a little better than, the LS11000. For those of you who know what the LS11000 looks like, those ultra black polarizers that Epson uses on the UB series are not included in the QL series. So I asked somebody why, and I haven't read a good response on it. The best response I got is that maybe those polarizers couldn't stand the heat and would need some R&D to get that there. But that's just a guess. I don't think anyone has any real answer on that. So I guess we could move on to the Dune 2 discussion. When we switched movies, we watched the full of Jurassic Park. Oh, one more thing I wanted to bring up. It wasn't just the desert scenes and so forth that were really bright and kind of like make it look more realism to me. It's the
flames right off.
It's the spotlights. It's all those white source lights that really just kind of like look more real and perceivably kind of change your opinion on what should be. And you realize, like, all these projectors should be brighter than they are. I mean, this is where HDR is going. This is why HDR exists. This is why we're not trying to just do 80 nits anymore. It's going to be a slow game to get to where we get final game, but we're working that direction. So when we switched over to the movie of Dune 2, it's the 4K UHD disc. We switched it into cinema mode. Again, that was an accident to have it dynamic contrast mode. We switched into cinema mode, and I turned off frame interpolation at the gentleman's insistence. I prefer it on, like I said. It looks more real to me with it on, but these gentlemen didn't think so. So we turned it off, and then we watched that for half or a third of the movie. And let's talk about that. Let's go in reverse order. Grant, you want to start with us?
Sure. Yeah. So like you said, I mean, my opinion of the Epson on, no motion interpolation and in a cinema mode is very positive. I enjoyed the presentation very much. I thought it was a great movie to showcase it because of those really bright sun desert scenes where you're supposed to be getting this feeling like, man, the sun is just incredibly bright on Arrakis, and it is just it's killing people. It's so bright and it's so hot there, and I think the projector and the extra lumens did a good job of conveying that. I thought that part was really positive, really great. I didn't really think we saw a lot of dark scenes, and not enough for me to really judge that one way or another. Let's put it this way: I didn't feel at any point when we watched it like, oh, this should be black and it's not. I didn't really feel that. I mean, maybe if I had looked at that same content on a JVC, maybe I would have thought that. I don't know, but I did not think that. at any point. The other thing was we did notice some weird stuff in like that green reflection thing that was on faces because we played with the tone mapping from the Epson and the tone mapping out of the Panasonic. We noticed a little bit of maybe some weird stuff happening with their tone mapping algorithm, which is kind of unfortunate. But um, overall, it was great, and it was awesome to see those especially those bright sun desert scenes be kind of like blinding and just like kind of appropriately so. Um, I liked it a lot. I thought it was great, and and one more thing about the size of the screen, I think is your screen's a lot bigger than mine is. And when I was doing the Jurassic Park, I was like, wow, you lose some impact of immersion on a smaller screen. You can't get around it. I would much prefer having a bigger screen. In fact, I'm trying to get a big one right now. But it's one of those things. How big do I go? And do I'm only going to go so big because my room limits, and I'm also going to be fighting the brightness again, and da da da. But just to say, having just a smaller screen in order to get the extra brightness isn't necessarily the answer. It's you're making compromises there too. Okay, I'll let somebody else go. Sorry,
Ryan.
Yeah, I can piggyback on some things that he brought up. I actually, even with the slight, we'll call them artifacts in the tone mapping, I slightly preferred Epson's tone mapping versus the players. I think what was going on with the skin, and you can see that same artifact if you go into like other tone mapping software. Like I see that one on J Rivers tone mapping. If you use which one is it? Is it Red October, something like that is what they use for their tone mapping. If you crunch the nit values low enough, like you squish the values to a small enough space where you say, oh, it's only like 50 nits or 75 nits or something like that for a max, that's the artifact that you'll get. It's basically a type of posterization where you've basically uh, you're not giving it enough levels to play with, where all of a sudden that splotchiness will show up. And I feel like that's probably what's going on with Epson's tone mapping, where they're pushing it to the edge a little bit to raise the brightness a little bit to play to the strengths of the projector. That's just me guessing a little bit, but that's what the artifacts reminded me of when I saw that. Like I can create that exact same splotchiness if I play back Dune in my room, and I drop the max nit level and the tone mapping far enough. I can get that to happen in that movie. I think I saw it happen on the opening scene on Godzilla -1 on the soldiers' faces. That same thing. You'll get that slight green, slight splotchiness going on in their face, where you're like, well, wait a minute, now what's that? And that can often happen when you're playing with little things like that. Outside of that, I really liked it a lot, actually, especially for stuff like right when the movie starts off, when they're torching bodies with flamethrowers in Doom Part 2. Like it's got a much stronger, I say this word too much, visceral feel with that brightness. Because when you see a flame, you aren't thinking muted and smooth. Like when you're near a real flame, you're expecting to have that stronger reaction from it. And so for stuff like that, I thought it was fantastic. And strangely enough, um, it's not all about nits, right? When it comes to dynamic range, but it helps to spot the capabilities of it. And that director, Denis Villeneuve, I'm probably butchering his name, but that movie, the first Dune, Blade Runner 2049, the cinematographers who work with him on those, they're two different ones, I think, between those films. They deliberately don't have that high of a nit level in their mastering either, right? So it's darkest dark and it's lightest lights. They aren't that severe. So that also will play into the strengths of a projector like that one, where you don't have a huge amount of contrast ratio to play with, but you do have a lot of brightness. So it's sort of an appropriate sandbox to play within, if you will.
Anything else to add, Ryan, or should we go to Tim?
I think that's about all I wanted to say about Dune Part Two. With the frame interpolation was a big thing that we went over back and forth on that one, where we would literally watch like a whole like 4 or 5 minute scene, then we ran it back and then we switched it off. And personally, when it comes to the panning, if it's fast panning, I start to miss the frame interpolation a little bit because I can't unsee the fact that it feels like I'm seeing two images at the same time always. Like it feels like I'm having double vision almost. But when it comes to just like if it's somebody talking in a scene, they're moving their arms around, or if their face is moving back and forth a lot, then I can totally understand that sort of soap opera-ish effect and how it can be distracting. I don't feel strongly one way or the other on it. There are some things I like about it, and then there's some things I don't. But I will say, Grant and Tim and Sheldon, they were all like, "Oh, thank God, it's gone."
I
That was
think
very
Grant
much
actually
their
said at
reaction.
one point, "Now I can appreciate this projector," and like
Yeah,
now
it's like,
it's something I can actually
yeah,
watch.
yeah, like
Really,
literally now
it
I'm
really
like maybe
was like
all
all of a
along I
sudden.
was blaming the wrong thing was almost his reaction.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we took that time to kind of separate it out. I, you guys who watch the channel know that I prefer that frame interpolation. Where you guys are talking, I'm just going to bring this audience. You guys have already talked about this with me, so just stand by for a moment. The frame interpolation to my eyes looks more realistic than not. There's not, it's rare that it doesn't look more realistic than not to my eyes. And I'm talking about from anything minuscule motion like hand movement like this to running to fighting to jumping around type scenes. When we switched off frame interpolation on the Epson and when I watched the JVC, I it looks like a slideshow that someone's just pushing the right arrow real fast, and it never has looked good. It doesn't still look good. I don't like it. The frame interpolation looks natural to me, and non doesn't. So it's an inverse reaction to what these gentlemen are having, where they're saying like this looks artificial. When we go to 24, it looks artificial to me, and I don't ever get that. I can let me rephrase. If we change it to normal or high on the frame interpolation, then it starts giving me that soap opera effect you guys are talking about. But I don't see that on normal. Like it's just not there. There are a few exceptions to that. Sometimes with special effects, especially dated special effects, I'll see something weird with frame interpolation on. It does something weird to the CGI. But on just regular recorded, it doesn't do that to me. I don't have that. I don't have that same observation that you guys have, to my eyes. So, Tim, you want to voice your thoughts on the QL3000 with Dune 2?
Yeah, so Dune 2, I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of the clips from it doing demo stuff throughout M-Wave to now. We've been using that pretty heavily. So I feel like I've seen some of the movie, but up until this point, I haven't seen the whole thing. And technically, I still haven't because we stopped about a little after halfway through. So
About 1:30 in the morning, we stopped.
that
Yeah.
close. Yeah, it was pretty late. It was good. I do like it. I think I like the second one more than the first one, but that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that later. Like everyone else was saying, the extra brightness and stuff is very fun, especially on that bright planet and everything's going on. Eventually, I finally switched seats from the back row to the front row. And one thing that, before I even get into that part of it, with Jurassic Park, I felt like I kept getting pulled out of the movie like constantly. Where on Dune, it was the other way around. I was more engaged with it. It was also new to me, so that's probably part of it too. But nothing was really like sucking me out. Instead, I was getting sucked into the movie, which is great. Also, the bass. Why don't we talk about that for just a quick second? It's insane in your room for that. That was so much fun. So to be the negative Nancy though on Dune and the Epson, and then I'll switch it back and go positive real quick. So the issue I had with your 12,000 was always being able to see the pixel grid. Luckily, the 3000 I don't see it so much, except for every once in a while, and it's in like the most inopportune times is part of the problem with that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Question.
Ryan?
I have a question. Is it the pixel? For me, I didn't pick up the pixel grid nearly as fast as I did the weave
screen?
when it got super bright.
Yeah, so I see the screen
on the
more with
sky
the 3000. Oh, sorry, I'm on a delay, I think.
Good.
So yeah, I do pick up the screen from time to time as well, but the screen doesn't bother me as much because the screen it's like
More
I think
random
it's because
feeling?
it's
More
more of
organic?
or like a diagonal pattern to it that everyone it's super, it has to be super bright to really get the screen stuff. But the problem that I have with the pixel grid is whenever I do see it, it makes everything seem lower resolution all of a sudden to me. So like the two scenes that stood out the most for me on the pixel grid was the Baron he's having like a gladiator type showdown for his nephew or son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who
Yeah.
the guy is.
Nephew.
They're doing like the gladiator thing, and they do a close up of the Baron, like full sun on him. It's black and white, and like his whole face is just like low res to me because I'm like, oh no, and it just takes you out because you're like, oh. And the other part was when
Wait, is
is
that the
most
time in the movie when it started glitching?
Well,
no
it might also be that
well,
part of the movie they deliberately shot with infrared cameras, so it has a soft, blown out look on purpose typically. You might double check that scene in other places as well because it's got a very smeary look by design just for that scene. Maybe.
yeah,
Maybe.
I'll give
Go
it a
ahead.
shot.
What's
I
your
don't
second
own the
thought?
movie yet, but I will. What's that, Jonathan?
What was your second one? You said the
The
that
second
scene.
one is when he was riding the sandworm.
Mm.
And I was like, no, because they do like wide panning shots. And I'm like, it's supposed to be real cool. And I'm getting completely pulled out of this. Although the bass is still insane, which pulls you back in.
And the orchestra score on top of it. It's just Riding the Sandworm is like an all-time great demo. I'm going to make a clip of it soon and put it in my rotation.
Yeah,
You
they were
should.
smart with the sound design on that one because they deliberately like they do loud and then they pull back and they do loud and they pull back. Like literally like almost all the sound drops out a little bit except for the rumble.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's right as he puts himself up on one knee to stand up while he's on top of the worm riding it. That's when the orchestral music really kicks in and the guitar kicks in. Yeah, I love the fact that they chose to bring almost all the audio away right before that because it just makes it feel that much stronger when it comes back in, just as strong, if not stronger, than before.
Mm-hmm.
Brings in that visceral impact that you were talking about.
Yes, sir.
So for
It's
reference for the
hard to use
audience,
that kind of term.
what Tim's talking about is either seeing pixel grid or screen or whatever he's seeing. My screen is a 152 when it's over zoomed to 16 by 9 on the 144 CinemaScope. So 152, and my front seats are about 11 foot from the screen. And it's a Seymour XD screen, acoustic transparent screen. So that'll give you some
Some
characteristics around the discussion. And Tim has better than 20/20 vision, so there's that too. I don't see what Tim sees on that. My vision's not 20. It's 20/20 in one eye and worse than 20/20 in the other.
from the back row, I never see it. It's not a big deal at all. And if I just was a little bit further back, I'd probably never see it. I see it way less on the 3000 and the 7000 than I did on the
12,000.
LS 12,000. Right. That one I can see it a lot more, and I don't know what the difference is. It might be partially the brightness overcoming those grids, but yeah, it's just something that when I see it, and it's just a byproduct of the technology.
For what it's
But
worth to my eyes, having had the LS 12,000 for 3 years and the QL3000 now for a couple months, the pixel grid was noticeable in very bright scenes with the LS 12,000, not as much as to Tim's eyes, at least to me, but the QL3000, I don't really see the pixel grid on the QL3000 with my vision. So there's that's going to be subjective to what you can see, your seating distance, your screen material, the 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 texture on your screen material, how large your image is, all those characteristics. Ryan Sharpenter always says also that those kind of characteristics exhibit themselves more on the brightest scenes, which might make sense in the context of what you were describing, the scenes you saw. That we would pick up that kind of texture or pixel stuff at the brightest type content.
and I think it's just more of an individual thing and how far you are from that image. So it's definitely something that can be worked around.
So just for
I was
reference,
asking what size screens we all have. Maybe
I
we
think
should
that's
go
a
through
good
that.
question to answer. Here we go. So go ahead and sound off, Grant.
It's 110 wide, ultra wide, and Seymour AV screen excellence. It's the Enlighter Neo material, probably like a 0.8 gain, something like that.
Ryan?
I am a 2-to-1 aspect ratio screen. It's 200 inches diagonal, 180 inches wide. It is a Sievertson Cinema White Micro Perf positive gain screen. 1.3 is what it advertises at. 1.15 to 1.2 real world, and it hotspots. But depending on the content, you might not notice it. Like we had a Cowboy Bebop marathon last night where we watched 10 episodes.
Oh,
The 1998 one. Let's get that straight. My wife had never seen it. We ran through over 200 minutes of it. I set it up in J River to where they have those little sound particles where you can pick the start and stop time. So I just made sure like the intro and the credits only played once for the whole thing, right? And that way we could chop like 15 minutes off right there. And then I had one intermission where we just played some music in between for a break. But all of that to say, I didn't notice a hot spotting that whole time. Whereas Dune Part 2, I'll notice it like 30% of the movie and I'll just grumble the whole time. So
Tim?
My screen's a 130 wide scope, and so at a 16:9 image, it would be like 100 and, or I mean, what is that? Like 113 inches? Not 100. What am I doing? Yeah, I think that's right. 113 diagonal, something like that. But then you zoom in, and I just go off of the wide. I don't know what the diagonal would be for the scope.
It probably.
Mine are very close. His is like 2 inches wider, I think.
Yeah, yours is probably like mine's a 152 over zoom. Yours is probably like a 149 ish over zoom and a 113
That sounds right.
Mine's a 116 16:9. Same sort of deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take a second here to kind of talk about some of my observations and just content I've watched, just briefly. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, and then we'll probably go into some questions. I don't know what your schedule is for tonight, gentlemen, or if you have something else that you want to discuss on this main topic. I'm glad to do that as well. Let me share this real quick.
Just to clarify, I don't hate the Epson, by the way, for people who are watching.
Yeah, he does. He told me.
The brightness can be quite fun, especially the animated
were shaking.
It is great. I just have been a negative Nancy overall with everything. So
okay, let's see if
I do like the Epson. I like Epson as a company. I think they do good stuff. If nothing else,
you don't have to apologize or feel bad, man.
It's so good.
Okay, so that's going to look weird for a second, but it won't for long, hopefully. So here, take a look at this content here. These are some things I want to talk about very specifically. We watched Paddington Bear. These are movies that I've watched on both of them, and I have some opinions. We watched Paddington Bear 2 on the Epson and the JVC NZ500, and this one is a clear win for the Epson. It's a bright movie. When there is dark content, it's kind of shot in the old style. There's never any really super dark scenes. Probably four times brighter than the Epson.
Grant with the question.
Is that?
It's okay.
Is it showing the little thing here, or what is it doing right now? I can't even look at it since I'm doing full screen.
It's showing your list, but it still has that question about the screen sizes.
Okay, let me pull that down then, if I can figure out how to do it.
While you're doing it, I'm going to exit and come back in because I'm on a lag for some reason.
Okay. So 100% Paddington Bear 2 QL3000. Dune 2, for me, it's the QL3000. When I went back and watched Dune 2 a little bit after you guys left, and I watched it some on the JVC, the brightness just wasn't there. And I think I'm at a point where that JVC, especially after you've watched content, it's not quite bright enough. You guys were talking about the auto wide and the normal. I too prefer normal, but I don't think it's quite bright enough for my subjective preferences. So I kind of use auto wide. I do use the extra screen width. You know how you can choose the zoom versus the normal native pixel. So you're using a 16:10 image or whatever it is for the panels, you get a little extra brightness there. I think that's worth doing in my room to get that little extra brightness. But Dune 2, I prefer on the QL3000. Now, Take this with this grain of salt that I probably overall prefer the QL3000. So this is with that bent in mind. But there are things on this list I'll talk about where it's a smash hit for the JVC NZ500. So Jurassic Park, I prefer the QL3000 for all things we talked about. I don't think there's anything that the QL3000 does wrong, especially if you just watch it in cinema mode, not dynamic like we did. There's nothing that's super dark in there. The extra brightness is nice for a lot of different reasons. Alien Romulus, home run for the JVC NZ500. This is the kind of thing that we're talking about, and there'll be a couple more on this list too. When you watch the QL3000, HDR tone mapping elevates those dark scenes. Tim describes this as being almost like taking a horror movie and changing it into an adventure movie, because it's no longer that deep, dark, dirty, scary scene. It's now elevated into kind of like they're elevating the details of the scene. The black floor is not as dark. All that stuff is trying to fit within the dynamic range of the projector with their tone mapping. And this is just not even the same movie. Like, it's just not the same movie. So JVC all the way on Alien Romulus. Harry Potter's the same way. I tried watching Harry Potter in SDR on the QL3000, and that's such a dark movie. Sheldon was kind of teasing me. He's like, that's not even that dark compared to modern things. It's still a dark movie. Front to end, almost, it's still a dark movie. The QL3000 highlights and stuff aren't desirable in that movie, and the dark floor of the JVC is. So I'll give you a very perfect example. We were watching the Harry Potter, the very first movie even, with the QL3000, and it's a night scene where they're going to visit the house, the aunt and uncle that are going to watch Harry Potter. He's a baby. They're dropping off the porch. There's a porch light in the back of the scene over Dumbledore's shoulder, and he's talking to the headmaster, mistress, or whatever her name is. That porch light is so bright, you almost have to shield your eyes, and the rest of the scene is all elevated. And you watch on the JVC, it's a totally different story. It's all dark. The porch light is not too bright. It looks like a real scene and not some sort of kind of crazed, crack addicted, super bright scene. I mean, just not right on the QL3000. On that movie, you would literally have to turn down the brightness probably to 50% to make it palatable, and then you'd still enjoy the JVC more. So I'm saying that there's a dichotomy here that some are definitely better. Top Gun Maverick, pick your poison. There's certainly a lot of bright scenes on that one that the Epson QL3000 just smashes in. And then there's some dark scenes too. When he's doing the test aircraft and he's flying around in the sky, in the atmosphere at Mach 10, that scene looks fantastic on the JVC. It keeps switching into the control room that's dark and lit with blue light, green light. It's very immersive in that JVC with that extra contrast. Meanwhile, on the bombing run, when it's outside in the snow, that QL3000 is awesome. So I appreciate the motion on the Epson more as well. So there's that as well. And not just frame interpolation, but just the motion in general. There's less smearing on the Epson LCD panels than there is on the JVC LCOS panels. So something that's fast motion like that looks really good in certain scenes on Maverick. YouTube
by the
random
way, real
things.
fast.
Yes.
I was just going to say real fast, maybe let Tim back in once you get to a good spot.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I didn't even, I'm looking only at this, so I don't.
Yeah, that's why I thought I'd mention that real fast.
Yep. Let me let him in.
He was getting all sad. He was making whimpering noises over here.
Add to stage. You're back, Tim.
Little pig, let me in.
Here it is.
Okay, so random clips on YouTube. I'm talking like all kinds of things. Music, the little 4K HDR clips, interviews, podcasts, whatever. Like all the content you consume. I consume a lot of YouTube content. QL3000. Like, no question, I prefer the QL3000 on all things YouTube. Whites are white, grays are grays, vibrant color. It's got more color space, I think, than the JVC. At least with the brightness, it sure looks like it does, and it's just more enjoyable. Apple TV music, Apple TV menu, no contest. QL3000. Every time I turn on the JVC after just going from the Epson, I have to say to myself, don't think about this menu. Don't think about like how bright the music is or how dim the music is. Think about how it's going to look in the movies, and just like forego your distaste. It's like a distaste in my mouth with how dim it is. When you come from something that's 3 times brighter and you go back to that, it's a big difference. Sports, QL3000 all the way for various reasons. The brightness, there's never any dark stuff, and the motion, like all the time. Sports. Gaming, all the time. Played some Sackboy with both projectors. Played Halo. Played Doom. Played Thumper with both projectors. Doom okay, this isn't all the way. Let me rephrase. The newest Doom didn't look that great on the QL3000, so I would give that one to the JVC. That's meant to be a dark game with there's outdoor scenes, and even in the outdoor scenes, it doesn't have the intensity, the weight, the help me out with a good word here to describe that. But there's just not the same gravitas with the Doom game on a bright projector where the black floor isn't as deep. So that one's clearly a JVC NZ7 NZ500. Now, that I don't know that this is universally true. Tim, this is more your style game. There's a little mouse game or something that you play. It's a little white mouse. It's a super popular game 10 years ago. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a platformer, like Super Mario, but there's a little mouse you're driving around.
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. At any rate, that's a very dark game, but it looks fantastic on the QL3000.
Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yes, that's it, Grant. Thank you.
It's not a mouse.
That looks fantastic on the QL3000, even though it's a very dark game. Because think about it, there's all these super bright highlights on the screen, and they're all just so intense with that QL3000 that even though the black floor in the JVC is noticeably better, those highlights just really draw your eye, and the motion smoothness and stuff. So Thumper's a rhythm game with incredibly bright neon type highlights. That's a lot of fun on the QL3000. Sackboy, I can't even imagine a better presentation. That's one of the things I wanted to do if we had more time. It's like you guys need to come over every night for a week or something so we could try some of these things. The Sackboy was fan-freaking-tastic on the QL3000. Just super bright colors, super smooth. Like you think of like, how could this be any better type situation? Halo, same thing. Halo at 4 times brighter than you're used to, basically. That's a lot of fun. There's not that much dark scene on that kind of game. It works good. There are scenes, clearly, I'm telling you, clearly, that you would want the JVC and you don't want to have the Epson. So, at this point, I saw in the comments somewhere, like, Jonathan, you should mount both. I'm truly at that point. I was thinking about just keeping one originally. That was my intent. At this point, I'm thinking about just hanging them both and choosing horses for courses, just picking the projector for the type of content that I'm consuming and enjoying what I have in that regard. So that's kind of my summary. I have quite a few different movies that I've watched just on one or the other that I could go into, but these I wanted to speak to because I purposely tried to look at them both and kind of get an opinion on those both. And all that probably surprises no one based on our whole conversation so far. Yeah. But that's where it comes out.
It's probably a good thing that you're consistent. Otherwise, people would start to be wondering what's going on over there. So, yeah, what's he playing at? What's he up to? It's funny you mentioned something in there. You just said it as white and gray is gray, but it's even worse than that. Like you stare at white long enough, and then you're aware when white doesn't feel like white anymore when you go to something else. Yeah. Right. So it's
if you stare at a screen that's slightly off for whatever reason, like a work monitor or something like that, and you go to look at like your phone or something that that is more in line with what you're used to, you're like, why does it all of a sudden look like purple to me? Staring at this thing, it's like, oh, my eyes have adjusted so much to this off-colored white that everything else looks way off.
And the part that stinks is it feels like my visual memory isn't that great for some things, but it's pretty good for brightness, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Right?
And it's hard to forget.
Yes, it's harder to forget, and it's easier to remember. That's like, depending on the content, I don't need to tell you guys this. Every once in a while, I'll be watching something, and my wife doesn't notice, but I'll be like, feels a little dim, right? Like I'll have that reaction every once in a while. And so that's something hard to get around, especially once you've been in front of these projectors. I've officially probably experienced the brighter projectors long enough to where I've got a long enough memory on it. And now it is sort of like the monkey on my back following me around at this point.
Yes. So. Yes, I agree.
And at the same time, it's hard to feel a sense of dread in a horror movie when everything's dark gray. So, at least for me. So
same here. Yeah.
There's your olive branch, Tim.
Add a little bit of context to some of this. So I've been going to a lot of the premiere movie theaters around here multiple times a week, and just to add a little context, like the brightest movie theater in this area is dimmer than Jonathan's screen. So just
I mean,
considerably.
It's very much the case. And
Yeah.
not even the new standard of 300 nits with the new HDR standard for movies won't be as bright as in here. So that's kind of cool to have that headroom where I have a little bit of future proofing for the next 10 or 15 years potentially. Uh-oh. All right. I've got to drop for just a moment because I've got a work call coming in, and I'm going
Ooh.
to put up a context of if you guys saw comments in there that you want to speak on, go ahead. I'm going to put one up that you guys can talk, and I'll see if I can get rid of this call. Here, you guys find the thread and put that in the comments if you will, and then I want you to talk about this, and I'll be back.
So actually, I can speak to that one right there. If somebody else wants to hunt down the
I'm
case,
not even logged in, so I'm not going to try to do the thread thing.
So yeah, the thread, there is a thread for that projector shootout, and I believe if you search for Kansas City informal flagship projector shootout 2025, those words will get you there. That's what you'll be looking for, and that should pop up, and that's over at AVS Forum. And it does sort of a rundown of what we talked about tonight, a little bit more detail in regards to, you know, I think there's some photos on there that show, you know, the environment that things were set up in, and people chiming on things. But that's where you can find that particular one. This one right here, how does Dolby Cinema then achieve true HDR at only 108 nits? I think that was partly a conversation that was happening in chat where we were talking about let's see here, the more brightness you have in conjunction with the more color space you have in conjunction with the more contrast that you have, the more that you bring into the picture, of course, the better job you're going to do of achieving true HDR. So the thing with, however, Dolby Cinema projectors is, in theory, and you'll get different contrast numbers on depending on the ones you pull up. They claim that it's up to 1 million, right? The problem with that is a lot of that is destroyed by environmental lighting that they're required by law to have, unfortunately. So that's a partial issue there. So it hurts some of it.
Can I interrupt you real quick on that pollution part?
Yes.
For this, so again, been to the theater a lot lately. For Superman, for whatever reason, you know how they always have those blue lights that they're kind of like lasers that shine down?
Yeah, extremely strong LED spotlights to a very specific spot on the floor.
Yes, exactly that. So for whatever reason, there's a Dolby like I don't know what you call it. It's like a bookend, but at the beginning of the movie where it kind of says like this is true Dolby Vision, blah blah blah, right? And it's like
before in cinema, this was black, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. Where it's like this is what you thought was black, and then all of a sudden it has a white dot and everything goes black, and it's like, oh yeah, this is our new black. During that exact spot where it has the white dot in the center of the screen, they turned off those front blue lights completely. This is the first time I've ever seen them do it. Completely turned them off. They still have the side ones that are like behind you.
Yeah.
But none of the front ones. I was like, whoa, they actually turned them off.
Yeah.
I was so excited. And so then I asked Brad, because he went to the movies like the next day or the day after. I was like, and he went to the same theater I went to. I was like, did they do that? And he's like, the only people who are ever going to notice is someone like you that's going 2 times a week. So I was like, Brad, you go all the time.
No.
He didn't even notice.
There's time to turn in his card, clearly, right? Like that's not how it goes.
I was so excited though.
But that's true though. That's a fair point. Like they have the sad part about it is, and when we had the home theater crawl in Kansas City and we went to see the last Final Destination Bloodlines movie, if I feel like if they would have literally just taken the volume knob, turned that thing up maybe 5 or 6 dB, and got just had more of the environmental lighting just dialed back a little bit more, that all of a sudden that would actually made like just a fair bit more impressive experience than what we got that night. Because as far as the actual contrast ratio is concerned, to get back to what the question was talking about, as far as the contrast ratio is concerned, it's high enough to take advantage of the fact that it is HDR. Right? It's just if only if you have a dark enough environment to pull it off, which sometimes they shoot themselves in the foot and negate a lot of that advantage, unfortunately. So, but that's how you would achieve it in theory if they're actually doing everything set up correctly. It just so happens on our visits to the theater, we keep on running into inconsistencies in the presentation that drive us a little bit buggo. Which, and I think I was talking to you about this right before we hopped on the call, Jonathan. Speaking of home theaters, I don't know if anybody in the chat read up on this. About 2 weeks ago, AMC said they were going to be showing commercials in the future before movies, not just like movie trailers or Coca-Cola in the lobby, but like, oh, here's a Jeep commercial or here's a Lexus commercial.
I saw that and I boo in your general direction.
So, and it was interesting. I was like, all right, what's the justification for this? This is for AMC only that they are announcing this, but they are, I believe, the largest chain left in the United States for any international viewers watching this. They were claiming a lot of other places are already doing this. Our research shows that it didn't hurt their attendance numbers, and they're claiming two things. One, they're acknowledging the fact that they are very much in debt. I think they were in like 14 or 15 billion in debt after COVID, and they've been able to pay it down a little bit. I think they're in like the 10 to 11 range. So they're making enough profit to pay off some of this debt, but they're claiming that this will help service that. In addition to that, every time you buy a ticket online, there's a thing at the bottom that says, oh, by the way, the movie will start 20 to 25 minutes after start time.
It's up to 35 minutes.
So whatever it is, they'll put the amount at the bottom of the ticket when you go to buy it. They'll say the amount, a rough amount on what it'll actually be before it'll actually start it. So is that enough for the justification? I say kind of, it doesn't make it as bad, except that's part of the movie going experience for me. I always liked having, let's say, 4 or 5 movie trailers and then the movie starts, because it's almost sort of like all right, I'm setting myself to be ready for them. I'm sort of acclimating myself to this environment. I'm getting in the mood for watching the movie. I don't like this idea of having to like, all right, I want to time it so I'm not stuck waiting 35 to 40 minutes before the actual movie starts, because like by then you're almost like, good grief, I'm almost ready to leave.
Yeah,
so
kind
of a bummer.
It does let you kind of acclimate your eyes to the darkness and stuff before the movie starts, and like you do get to find out about upcoming movies and stuff, which is sometimes good. Or in Jonathan's case during Final Destination, of like, this movie probably isn't for me because the trailers that are coming on aren't the right ones for me.
Yes. And I will say that just to make it clear that these are commercials before the movie starts. They wouldn't run them during it. If they ran a commercial during a film, that would be it for me and going to the cinema.
yeah.
Forget it. I would not. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like the premium way to experience a movie. And what's more immersive breaking than that? You might as well turn the movie off for 2 minutes, bring up the lights, and wait a minute or two, and then bring the lights back down and start playing the movie again. It's literally
there's a handful of times
bad.
where I would have appreciated that just for bathroom breaks, but otherwise,
maybe, I don't know. Speaking of which, have you ever seen those movies dedicated to bathroom breaks where they'll tell you a good spot for the story if it's a long movie? It's like, oh, when this scene starts, you got 2 minutes. This is what happened. It's not a whole lot. You won't miss much. Go hit the John. There's a movie. I can't remember what website it is, but there's one out there dedicated for that.
I'm gonna have to like be back and forth. My computer's getting a patch update. This is the benefit of working in IT, I say with sarcasm. I got called from work. I don't know how long it'll take. So we can either stall the thing here and resume another night, or I can just let you guys run with it if you're comfortable. I have a series of questions starred. Can you guys see the starred questions or not? Do you see them on the right-hand side?
I'm not logged into that to see them.
Okay. So what I will do, I can work on the side. I don't need to be on the phone. I just have to get my PC. I can star them if you guys want, and you can answer the question. And if you don't want to, we can cancel this and resume another night. Your choice.
I admit,
for a little bit longer.
I can go for a little bit longer.
So what I'm going to do probably is just put the questions on the screen, and you guys can answer them as best you see fit, and I'll move on when I can. I'm going to go grab my laptop right now, and I'm going to click show, and then run with it.
All right. Well, before we get into that, the little hack that I learned just recently for the previews before the movies, if that does bother you, if you're using the AMC app, it will let you add it to your calendar. Like once you buy a ticket, it'll let you put it into like your phone's calendar, or you can put it, I think it may even be on its own little thing. but it will give you in the calendar the start and end time. And so if you already know the runtime, because it shows you that in the app before you even get to that point, you can figure out exactly when the movie's going to start. So if you don't want to show up until it's about to start, that's a super easy way to know exactly when it's going to start. Because say it's going to end at 10:45 and it's a 2-hour movie. Well, okay, now I know when to be there, instead
Yeah.
of like hoping that I'm not going to get stuck with a 35-minute wait before the movie starts.
Right. Okay, what do we got here? Kenny, or maybe it's spelled or pronounced some other way. Something I've been wondering is if the AVR trims in the positive or negative affect the 20 dB dynamic range swing in movies. So when he says 20 dB dynamic range, that's roughly sort of the standard-ish that they're playing with. You're talking about like, all right, somebody's talking, all of a sudden there's a gunshot or something like that. And, there's a little bit to the left and the right of that for the leeway that they get. But the way I would answer that is the answer is sort of. It's sort of like a short answer is yes, it can affect how much of the dynamic range that you actually hear. And that's because, how would I explain this? If you were to add to your left and right positive dB or make it louder, or like to the center, make it louder, like say 3 or 4 dB, that means you're making the dialogue 3 dB louder, but you're not changing the mix's relative dynamics, just that channel output, right? At the same time, though, that the trim affects the absolute SPL, right? So you have to be careful which can clip or compress things, right? So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it would be possible for you to get really crazy with your trims and sort of rob from one channel versus another to where it might take away from that budget that you're being presented with as it goes out into your room.
Yeah, and the way that I understand is like the more you give positive boost to anything, you're limiting your max output because you're going to run out of headroom.
Right. And if at all possible, you should only ever want to be minusing off of something on your AVR, right? It's like you don't want to, like, if you go into somebody's AVR and you see someone, they've got like a +7 on something and then like a -20 somewhere else. Well, one, there's usually an issue somewhere else requiring that big of a range. But then two, especially like if you're dealing with like a low frequency channel and you're sending to something like say a mini DSP, you will get like an awful garbled noise that will hit that thing because it's too hot for it to handle, and you're much better off having it pulled down in those types of situations for sure. So, yeah.
So,
anything to add, Grant?
No.
No.
Going to the next one here.
That's not far off from Jonathan's situation, frankly. Upgrading from a QL3000 with a 150-inch diagonal. That's a 16:9 now, though, instead. So, what I'm curious, what's the gain difference on that microperf from the Diamond XL? I can't remember that off the top of my head. But you probably weren't that dim before. So that means Brian over here is definitely super addicted to the moth to a flame effect, for sure. And I'm going to assume, too, that those are going, if it's microperf, that's acoustically transparent.
He's saying it's a 1.2.
Dude, that's going to be bright. You got to be kind of stoked about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be real neat. I still think if the price disparity wasn't so big, I still think I like the QL7000 quite a bit more than the QL3000 because it's just the black floor doesn't change very much between them, and you just get twice as much brightness. You don't want it for everything. We already talked about that. But for some things, it's just extra headroom, and you can always lower the laser. I run mine at 100% laser most of the time. For some SDR content, I've been turning it down to 85 or 80 because it sometimes just does seem too bright. But 100% laser majority of the time. And when we had the QL7000 here, twice as bright, I liked that at 100% laser on a lot of the things we've watched. So not really any additional negatives, but just more brightness. The negative is the lots of extra money that the QL7000 costs on top of.
Mm.
Okay, so then here, next one. Oh, okay.
He's
we already talked about that one. Yeah. So Kenny brought up this movie. Have any guys seen this? I have not seen that.
I know
Not
of it.
yet.
I know the style. I've seen the trailers. And I haven't watched the whole thing, but it is 110% the NZ500's wheelhouse and then some. It's like if you think Alien Romulus is, have a little bit of bright punch here and there with some black levels, that one goes, even farther still down the line. And
Yeah,
so I,
played a couple demos when we were setting up for the crawl. Beforehand, he was. I don't know if he ended up using it or not in his actual demo list, but we watched a couple clips from it back then. I haven't seen the whole movie yet. I want to. I wish Sheldon would have came on tonight because he would have brought this movie up for sure of defending the
Tim, he's
JV.
bullying. It's important.
Grant, have you seen that one yet?
No, it's like high on my list. I really want to see it, and I've read some reviews, about the audio and video portion of it, and they've commented on the inky blacks, and so I'm sure it'd be great on a better black floor and probably even on an OLED. Speaking of, you mentioned you were talking about some of the games, like so Ori and the Blind Forest.
Mm-hmm.
When you come over here, I'm going to change your mind about what you want to watch that on.
Oh, ooh, that's a threat.
Yeah, but it's not what you think.
I haven't played it on the OLED yet, but I can imagine it'd be a
I'm
draw.
going to show it to you on my OLED. It'll blow your mind because you're getting blacks, and those bright highlights, and it's unbelievable. You're like, oh, that's how it's actually supposed to be.
There's a question coming up that I starred that I think you and I will be on the same mind about, and that's in regard to that very conversation. Here's the next one.
It's funny. Somebody mentioned it wasn't a question, but they were talking about a JVC model that isn't actually for a home theater. It's actually for their simulation line of things, right? So you can't actually just like search it up and find out what the MSRP is. But it's an interesting model they called out because it's a JVC with 6,000 lumens and a 10,000:1 native contrast ratio. And it's still claiming to use the same panel technology as these others, which it looked like it was the resolution looks like it's a non-standard resolution. I think it was like 4,096 by like 2,400, so way more square. I'm guessing, probably for like golf or something like that. If I was a betting man. But that would be something interesting to see, like turning that firepower towards the home theater world. I'm curious digging into that model like that a little bit farther still to see if there's any obvious weaknesses for it that they wouldn't want to do something with that. Because that one sort of flew by me. I had never ran into that one before. Yeah, brightness is totally the best. It's and on that particular type of content, it's addicting. For sure. And when we're talking about Ryan, we're talking about the other Ryan who lives in the Kansas City area. So
not all that far from you either.
Nope, same town.
Yeah. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but when he cranks that thing up to 100% laser in his room, he's got a 160-inch screen, and I don't remember the screen material. Does anyone else remember the screen material he has?
Lighter Nito, I thought. 4K.
I think that might be right.
Yeah.
So it's close to 750 nits. And it literally is like standing in front of headlights at night when you're playing something like Art of Flight, where it's in this like a snowfield or something. It's so bright, it's unbelievable. Yeah, you want
to put sunglasses on. That's how bright it is.
It was so bright. It's really fun. You're not used to seeing an image that bright. When a TV says it does 1,000 nits, it's on a small 65-inch thing. Now you got a 160-inch thing and it's 750 nits. It is bright. It is bright. Okay, next one. One of you guys read it if you don't mind.
Kenny's talking about how he's 8 feet back from a 135-inch screen, and he would need larger. He has OLED displays, including a PC monitor, and the blacks aren't that important, but the motion and the brightness are important. He can't use LCD projectors. Oh, that's too bad because it's close to
why you can't use LCDs.
Yeah, I would be curious on what the follow-up logic would be behind that, because if the motion and the brightness are important to them, then you normally would be like, okay, what's going on in the world of LCDs? That's usually the first place to point your nose towards. So
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's like triple laser stuff for the DLP side of things that you could go with, but that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know. If you can't do like the Epsons, you're going to be jumping up in price by a considerable margin.
I would just echo what you guys said. And as far as the projector technologies, generally DLP is considered supposedly the cleanest by most people. I don't think that, but that's what most people would say. Followed by LCD, followed by LCOS. The different panels do have different refresh rates. OLED generally is not considered great for gaming until you get to really high refresh rates. It looks pretty choppy at lower refresh rates because there's no like sample and hold. It's just like a real clipped image, real fast presentation. The pixel response is immediate on OLED, so there's not much natural blur, if you will. It's so to hear you say you don't like LCDs for gaming, it is surprising to me. Kenny, if you're still here, give us a little more information on that. Next one.
I think we went over that one to start things off, actually. So
okay, there you go. Did you guys link this thread? I think I had mentioned that. If someone could put it in chat, that'd be good.
Let me go ahead and put it in chat. I gave a shout out on what you could search for, but let me go ahead and just drop that into chat.
Okay, there's the next
Going
one.
back to the Dolby Cinema thing real quick, I don't necessarily want to go down the target of the question, but for going to a professional cinema, aim for that all the time. All the other ones are a step down. The big problem that I have with like the IMAX is the seating sucks because you're in like more of the standard like lean back style seats, and if you're in there for like a 3-hour movie, like I don't know, the Mission Impossible recently, it's unbearable by the time you get out of there. Your legs hurt, your knees hurt, and it's like, am I really this old?
And the vast majority of those IMAXs are Limax 4K laser, right, and that's it. And you blow an image up as large as they do, even though if it is 4K, if you're, I would say, like the halfway point of the theater and maybe up to 1/3 and definitely even closer, it's already looking a tad soft.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Dolby Cinemas are just so much leaps and bounds better overall. Anyways, we can move on.
Oh, that one still answer this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this actually goes back to something else, because there's another consideration, and you touched on that a little bit, Jonathan, earlier when you were talking about, okay, the 7000, you like it even more because the contrast ratio doesn't it's almost exactly the same as the 3000, but you gain 40 to 50% more brightness, or I shouldn't even say 40%. It's basically a doubling. That's a better way. That's more accurate. Hopping up to 10,000 lumens. So if you have the same roughly the same contrast ratio to play with, and you're throwing more light at your pupils are going to clamp down. And if your pupils are clamping down a little bit, all of a sudden, the quote unquote same measured black may in fact feel blacker because of the way your actual physical eyes work. And this is, again, scene dependent on when something like this might come into play. But you might have that feeling of, oh, now that actually looks to be fairly decent. I wasn't expecting that to, have almost a comparable feel to this other higher contrast ratio device over here. So that's something to consider, and why you are 100% correct. You would want to see it for yourself. You don't want somebody else answering that question for you.
And so this kind of comes up with something I was saying earlier. Seeing it for yourself is always the best. And the thing that was weird to me, I wasn't expecting that to be my response when we switched back to the LS12000, was that, it suddenly looks so much darker to me than the 7000. We had spent literally like at least 6 hours playing with the 7000 before we switched back, and we only switched back for a little bit. We just watched a few little clips of that we had already seen. It was like, oh, this is much blacker all of a sudden. But that going from the 3000 to 7000, what you're saying is like you start at the same level of blackness, but now you have all this extra brightness to play with. The thing that So I do think the 7000 is super bright, like unbearably bright. Um, the thing that I think I've noticed with how Jonathan's been talking about stuff is that Jonathan also likes to have his lights on, like in the speakers and stuff when he's doing things. I like a very blacked out room, so I think I like my eyes more open, so then that brightness is more bright with that contrast. If that makes sense. So it's almost the exact opposite of what Ryan was just explaining. So when you're with something that's very bright, your iris is clamped down, and so then you're now making everything seem a little darker naturally. And I think I prefer how my body reacts the opposite. When everything's already dark and then that bright comes on, you're like, oh my gosh.
I think that's worth talking about a little bit too. With the JVC, because I'm kind of fighting for lightness, I'm going around and like turning off every LED. I'm unplugging things from the computer. I'm turning off my keyboard lights. I'm turning off my mouse light. Like I'm turning off the speaker lights. Trying to get blackness in here because you can tell like the black floor is low enough you can tell when those LEDs are lighting up the screen because even just a little pinpoint LED like a LED on this JBL speaker over here, an LED on my little Scarlett audio mixer here, a pinpoint of light brightens up that screen in an otherwise completely dark room. And the JVC, maybe not for a single LED or two, but once you start getting a little half dozen of them, you'll notice that on the screen, and it's higher than the black floor on the JVC. The Epson, that's not a thing.
Yeah,
So
the Epson just overpowers anything that's in the room.
the black floor is not native enough, low enough to even have these LEDs. The mountain light they put on there is a pittance compared to the black floor of the Epson. Like its black floor is just not there. And B, it's so bright that even if it was there, it's inconsequential. So I can have my speakers on 5 or 10% brightness. Right now they're 100%. Alexa, turn the prime lights to 10% brightness.
You just screwed over anyone that has an Alexa.
So now you see that they don't have prime lights. It should be fine. Now it's 10% brightness. I can watch a movie with the Epson with these bright lights on where you can see it, and I like the cosmetics of it, and it doesn't affect the contrast. On the JVC, it's making a red glow on the screen that's not desirable. So there's that little bit of nuance too. If you're going to get a JVC, you want to velvet out your room. You want to get rid of all your LEDs. You want to really make it show its best. And that's exactly why I went to like the black carpet and the black sidewalls and the black velvet on the front wall, because the JVC was noticeably better when you started doing those things. And with Epson, it just didn't matter. Like that was never a thing. So putting a little bit of practical to that discussion.
Sure.
Interesting. This call that I got actually was nothing. Like I tried it, it worked. I said try it again, and he said it worked. So nothing to see here. Moving along.
That's good.
My wishful thinking, says Stephen McGauley, my wishful thinking is that JVC is due for an upgrade, and they have seen what Epson has released. Can they really launch new projectors in the next 18 months at the same sub 4,000 lumens? It's almost more along the lines of sub 3,000 lumens until you get to that flagship, sub 2,500 lumens. I hope the same thing, and you guys might have had the same thought. Like maybe Epson has changed the playing field a little bit, and we won't get the 200 or 300 lumen bump up that we sometimes see every 3 years. Maybe it'll be a 500 or 600 lumen bump up or 1,000 lumen bump up. I'd love to see that. I hope they do.
I'm praying to the theater gods that they add some kind of like either a colored laser or something to add to the color gamut and to add brightness at the same time. Just something new, something, because it seems very like evolutional so far since for like ever with JVC. I feel like and they are getting better. Like the 500 and 700 are great, but I still want more. Like, and if nothing else,
it's hard not to look over the fence and see what's going on everywhere else in display technology. So that's part of what makes it so hard to watch the world of projectors. It's a little bit of a tortoise and a hare type situation, watching them run off into the distance.
Okay.
But to answer his question, yes, I do think they can, and they probably will, but to our chagrin, because I think all of us want something a little bit better from their next outing.
Yeah. Grant, here's a question for you. Rick says, what screen are you thinking of purchasing on your upgrade path?
Okay, so I do like my screen material being lighter neo. there is a similar screen material that Seymour AV has. I forgot what it's called right now, but it's one of their, it's like very similar than Lighter Neo. I'm going to compare those two to see which I like better, but probably one of those two as far as the screen material. On the size, I'm 110 wide now. I'll go to either 120, maybe 130 wide if I can fit it in. It really is just what fits in my room, and I'm limited in my height, which hurts my sight lines and possibilities for rear rows, seeing the bottom of the screen, and all kinds of baloney. So that's the size and I'm thinking about doing. And then I really like masking my image, and that's plays into the perceived contrast ratio that you have, especially with the lower black floor of the JVC. And I have the front of my room velveted out, and my ceiling's velveted and black carpet and all that stuff. And I do like, kind of like Tim was saying, when it goes dark, and then your eyes is just looking into a black void, and all of a sudden something pops onto the screen and doesn't even have to be that bright, and it's becomes very impactful. I really enjoy that. And so as far as the masking really helps that, and it helps the perceived contrast and how the image pops. So I like perfectly masking my image. So what I'm considering doing is fixed height, and then have automated masking for the sides. So they have a couple different lines you can get, but one of them is a little bit cheaper, and it's the Trim L line that they don't have to ship in multiple containers. They've done it in a different way to make it cheaper now. And so that's what I'm thinking about doing, and going with automated masking and perfectly mask all my stuff. But to Jonathan's point, like you're talking about, oh man, now I'm worried about this light and now that light, and yes, all that. You have to really, it's kind of a sickness when you start velveting stuff out. You just keep going and going and going, and then it's the next brightest thing that bothers you, and now you can take care of that. Well, then it's the next thing that bothers you, and there's no end to it, really. So you kind of got to be a little bit nutty. But
You don't have to be nutty, but it's fun to be nutty.
Yeah, it's fun time to time. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I like Sheldon one time was like, "Do you have a watch with a light on it or anything?" And because he wants to make sure on certain clips that anyone covers that stuff up. So it can get to that point where you're like, any little dot, turn it off.
Not a lie. My kids, I just got them Apple Watches. All right, we don't have phones yet. I got them Apple Watches. I'm not kidding you. I make them take their Apple Watches off when we watch a movie. This is Dad's crazy.
Yeah. All right. So that's a practical thing that it can be extrapolated out. If you're on the JVC in my room, if a guest, and this happens a lot in modern times, guests will pick up their phone, they get a text message. There's enough light off that phone to really affect the image, like negatively, truly. Even though it's silly, it's a little tiny device. One of the benefits of that QL3000 is you're not even going to know that phone's being looked at. Like it's
fair.
It
You're
doesn't
going to miss all those notifications.
Thank goodness.
Good riddance.
So that's one of the positive, but there was one thing on that projector I didn't realize, and maybe you can answer this for me real fast, Jonathan, because I forgot to ask you. Was it that there's not a dedicated Lens 1, Lens 2 option?
Yes, it's a terrible oversight. Yeah, so the original Epson remotes, I mean, the Epson remote looks remarkably similar to the LS12000 for those of you who are familiar with that one. The difference is that it has a different user button, and they're soft program buttons, like you can choose in the option menu what you want it to be. Unfortunately, one of them is not lens memory recall. And so you don't have a quick switch. So I have to go into menu to switch between CinemaScope and 16:9 or 2.0 aspect ratio. That's unacceptable. Epson will surely fix that. It should be nothing more than a firmware update or something along the line. As far as I know, no one's talked about it yet, but that's something I want to get out there. I'll probably actually just go through Ryan and get him to get the ear of one of the Epson reps. But yes, that's a clear oversight. Like, there's no reason not to have that. Maybe they don't think that these kind of things go in a lesser installation. Like, maybe people would be using with processors where you wouldn't need that button. Maybe, but why not have it? I mean, it's something they've had for years and years. So weird choice.
At least the remote works okay.
Yes, the
Yeah,
Epson
there
remote
there are
do
levels to
very
this.
well. And they're HDMI CEC, so your buttons like volume and stuff work on all devices. And the power from like your Apple TV remote, that's one of the things I really like about the Epson over the JVC. It's something simple, but it is simple. This remote, my 7-year-old can turn my whole theater on and off with the Epson because this controls everything. Through HDMI CEC, it controls the Epson projector, it controls the AVR, it controls everything. With the JVC, it's the separate remote, which is not that big of a deal, but already like 3 times in my house, my kids have watched it, and I have both projectors hooked up so they can hook up what they want. They happen to be watching the JVC and they forgot to turn it off. So then I come down here and notice, luckily not days later so far, that the JVC's been on the whole time. Because the black floor is so low, unless I change it to a blue black floor, which you can do, you wouldn't even know it's on. But it doesn't even show that it's on. So that's not cool. I wish they would integrate. And why? Come on, JVC, why have you not integrated HDMI CEC? That's been a standard for 10 years or something at this point. So that's a bummer on that side. Okay, so your question here, if this Grant, this is where I think you and I come together.
Mm-hmm.
If a company sponsored your home theater and they offered 120-inch OLED, if one existed, a projector of your choice, LED panel wall, whatever size you want, which one are you guys choosing?
I'll let others go first, but I have an opinion.
There's zero question I'm doing the 120-inch OLED. I've already said that on many podcasts. Like 115, 120, when that comes down to reasonable price, I'm swapping out in an instant because I have an OLED right here in front of me. I'm with Grant. It's the best of all technologies. Hardly a flaw. It's a great display device.
Yeah, I would take the OLED too, just to agree. But here's the ultimate gotcha is now what the heck do you do with your center channel? And boy, I don't know where I'm going to come down on this one. At some point, it will be an actual choice. And what do you do? There's a lot of different conflicting opinions. For me, I couldn't go with a solid state display if it meant taking my audio from where it is to losing even 5% of that impact, let's just say. Because man, like all you guys, I'm fighting for 1% gain in anything. I scrutinize all this stuff, right? And spend hours listening and tweaking and everything. So I have to keep my front stage sound wise. I have to keep that cohesive. I have to keep the dialogue. I have to, it has to pan properly, etc. And I don't know what the answer is to that yet. I know there's a lot of possibilities out there. I've looked at a lot of them. I don't know what's going to happen when it eventually gets affordable, but I hope there is something out there. But I have to preserve my audio first in that. So yeah, but we'll see what actually happens when push comes to shove.
Here's my thoughts on that, Grant. I differ a little bit from you on that point. I feel like the improvement on the video side would be, I mean, put a percentage by it: 50%, 80%, 100%, 200%. It's tremendous. And so if I have to drop audio 5% to get 100 or 200% image increase, I'm willing to make that trade. I'm like you. I don't want to lose my center channel behind the screen. I like it. I say it's praiseworthy to have that. It's such an imbalance though, as far as the improvement on one side versus the loss on the other, that I think I'm willing to accommodate that.
I don't know. I shouldn't have thrown out percentages because blah blah blah. But I guess my point is, when it would be very difficult if I if I got that great OLED giant image and all of a sudden I was oh, with the sound, like oh,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
when a movie comes on and it just grabs you, you're like, oh god, like okay, here we go. Let's say opening scene, the very first note of The Greatest Showman comes out to you,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't give you tingles.
Mm-hmm.
You would not be happy.
I agree. Sound is very,
I don't
very.
know what I'll do.
I just think I think it doesn't have to be like intolerable.
Yeah.
There are intolerable center channels, but there are acceptable. I mean, I've experienced plenty of theaters with horizontal center channels that are properly implemented. Might be a little more difficult with 2 rows because,
Yeah, that's the thing. Oof.
but the front row you can do pretty well with that.
Yeah.
I've been in rooms where, and I did it myself at one point, where you have a center channel above the screen and one below the screen, and we've talked about that on the podcast before too. Comb filtering is a nasty thing according to the forum professionals, but in practice, how much do you hear it? This is a valid question. I remember Randy Bessinger's theater in 2015. He had a Procella above and below,
Remember that too.
and everybody in that whole crawl, it's in the thread, was talking about how good the dialogue was in that theater. Now, I was confused at that time. We're first getting the measurements. A few years earlier, I'd read about comb filter and I read about how that can really be destructive to the quality of the sound. I asked Randy, can I come over and measure your theater and see if I see comb filtering on the measurements? Like, because everyone is praising your center channel, your dialogue performance, and it shouldn't. I don't understand this, so I want to measure it. Randy was a good sport, and he said, sure. I went over to my Omni mic and I measured comb filtering from hell. It with no smoothing, it was like this. Like there was not a nice flat line. It was crazy, and it didn't matter. Everyone praised the dialogue. So it kind of taught me a little bit sometimes between the academic and the perceived, like human audible perception.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that being a kind of a stark lesson and one of many. We just kind of think, all right, maybe there's not quite as much to this hatred of the dual centers as not. So I always keep that in my back pocket. Like worst case scenario, I could probably put one above and below and still have a tolerable center channel setup.
Fingers
It's
crossed.
harder to dial in perhaps with rear row and front row because you got different heights and different distances and so forth. But I think a compromise is could be warranted.
So
okay, we kind of dominated. You take a shot at this, guys.
So for me, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm very much in love with OLEDs, but I don't know. I don't think if someone wants to sponsor my theater, absolutely, whatever it takes, I am for sale.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, it's almost done, but it's very expensive, and there's a lot of time and work put into this. But going back to like, if money's no object, if I can have anything I want. Do I want a 120-inch OLED? I'm assuming it would still be 16:9, which is kind of a disappointment to me. I don't want just a bigger TV. I have big TVs. I don't need that. I want a scope screen, and I actually like the projected image. There's just something to be said for a projected image. It is different. It is a little, I don't know. It's a little old school, I guess, but
I like
do
those
love
lit up
me an OLED
particles
for
of
gaming.
dust in the air. That's always fun.
Yeah,
It's
you can always put your
literal.
hands up
It's
and do-
magical pixie dust, man.
And the kid in the back row making finger puppets on the screen, inevitably in my room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, I did during Jurassic Park.
the kid in the back. There you are.
I don't know. I think I'd have a hard time to get rid of the speakers behind the screen. I think I'd have a hard time with not having a scope screen. I like that's a lot of compromise in my opinion, but I don't know.
Honestly, for me personally, a 120-inch OLED in my room would be really underwhelming. It'd look kind of sad.
Isn't that
It
funny?
looks small to you.
Yeah.
Coming from a 200 to 120, it's not worth the trade.
It's because I have something that's about 110 inches in my bar area, and you can stack, that one too wide and too tall, and it's still slightly smaller than the other one. All of that to say, I've been keeping my eye on micro LED panels. They can get you some of your concerns taken care of. Like for example, aspect ratio. You can, depending on the system, you can have a little bit more custom aspect ratios for some of them. You can have those custom resolutions. You want to watch for things like it's still fairly expensive. Last I checked, 163-inch micro LED panels that the pitch, I believe 0.9 and 0.8, somewhere in there, is about what you want for the pixels to not have too much of a gap between them. So you start seeing really bad, like screen door effect or a moire from angles or something like that. That would be a good enough pitch that I would look for. There was a model looking at the other day at its specs that the company name escapes me right now because they're fairly bespoke still, but around 65, 70 grand for 163-inch micro LED wall, which not too bad. That's still a little too small for me, but it's enough for me to pay attention at the very least. And so, and then
70
there are other,
grand though?
what's that?
60 or 70 grand, you said?
Yeah. And I know that's a lot, but here's the thing. That's what it is this year. The previous year for that size for the equivalent technology was around 180, 200 grand. And before that, the year before was in the 300s roughly, I think. And before that was $500,000. So we're doing this for
So I have
sure.
yet to see one of these big video walls on the premium side. I've seen like the ones at the zoo or at the airport or something, even at my workplace. Have you seen one of the premium home-based displays to know if it's up to your standards?
Well, first of all, none of them are pitched as home based that I know of. Like they're
Mhm.
all pitched as, or I take that back. They're pitched to either businesses or the ultra wealthy. But I
Mhm.
don't consider that quote unquote consumer/home based,
Mhm.
right? Plus, there are other little things too that I'm kind of I enjoy now. Like for example, I have like my speakers are behind the screen. They're lit up by LEDs, and I do fun little pre-show effects with those kind of things, right? Plus, my subwoofers are back there too. I have very intense curiosities about how much a panel system like that would shake with big subwoofers. I haven't had that question answered yet to my satisfaction. Even when I run into, because I've seen some of these displays in the wild, and in fact, my company just put in one that actually would almost be reasonable to me. That's just about the size of my screen. I want to find out how much they paid for it. I'm training through the custom software for it right now, actually, but for like the display stuff you can put on there. But um, all of that to say, I don't know the heat output of anything like that, whether or not it would be acceptable for my room. So there's a lot of question marks for me still, but it's getting to the point where I'm finally paying attention to it. And when I built my room, I put in 3 circuits at the front of the room dedicated just in case something like this comes along that finally does get good enough.
Sure. Interesting discussion. You're coming from a completely different perspective. From all of our perspective, like I'm at a 116, 16 by 9. Tim's at a 113, 16 by 9. Grant's at a somewhere a little smaller than that, 16 by 9. So for us, a 120 is an actual upgrade, at least for 16 by 9 content. But for you, yeah, tremendous drop in your space. If I were in your shoes, I would still probably be in the projector realm as well. I'm not sure about many LEDs. I've been to the CEDIA shows to see like kind of some of the ultra wealthy type displays, but the ones I have seen would not enthrall me. They would not be something I would be willing to move to. They can be bright as all get out, but their contrast is miserable. The ones I've seen, like looks like 800 to 1 or something type range. Okay, so going to the next question here. So Derek says that he enjoyed watching Alien Romulus on the QL3K. Yeah, I mean, that's true in a lot of scenarios. That if you don't have something to A/B, you can be really happy with what you're seeing or listening to. But when you do comparison back and forth, I'm just telling you straight that one is a showcase on the NZ500. The JVC really does really well on that. And it's all about the native black floor on there and about the elevation of that detail. Like the Epson elevates the detail and brings it out of the black floor, which changes, as Tim says, from a horror movie to an adventure movie. It loses some of that scary impact. It just does. All right. So this one, I haven't been to the theater for 20 years, but I remember them as very bright. It's kind of interesting perspective. Those kind of nostalgia memories, like when we were kids.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, hey, here's the other thing too. You're when you're younger, your eyes see different. So who knows?
Mhm.
Maybe what was bright in the past isn't anymore.
And what's funny
My
is 20
ocular
years ago
degeneration says differently.
is right when they started to switch over to more digital projectors and stuff, but that's probably still lamp based back then.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so what is that? Like at the top end of it, you're looking at 17-foot Lamberts tops before you'd be um, capable of, or what would happen? I guess that would be film still, if you're
Well, I mean,
taking.
they could have multiple xenon bulbs and all that kind of stuff. I don't know that you have a limit on brightness, but I do think if you think back how we all appreciate the deeper contrast, but when you think back what you watched a kid, those projectors couldn't have been more than like 500 to 1, 300 to 1 even on when we were kids. In
Oh
the
well, digital projection wasn't a thing when I was a kid.
well, even so, I mean, consider it wasn't that long ago that DLPs were in the 5 to 800 to 1,000 range, and now they're at the 1,500 range or more with their processing. Like the Valerian has the that processing that they can engage. For the longest time, even in modern cinema, like an IMAX is 2,500 to 1. I don't know where I'm going with that, except for just nostalgia really enhances what we. Small town Boonville, Missouri, Kokomo Cinema. That's where I went growing up all the time. My neighbors would take us there as as us kids with their family. We went there several times a summer for all the Disney movies, for some of the like Homeward Bound type movies, that kind of stuff. That picture couldn't have been good. In hindsight, going back to look at it now, I think we would all be like, "This is a crap theater." I loved it as a kid, and I never thought anything different of it. Like so, the nostalgia does tint all those memories to certainly to what we have now. I mean, you guys might even have that same memory. Speaking of that, do you remember when you got like a nice CRT TV, maybe your first nice CRT TV, and you thought, can it really get any better than this? This looks really nice. That was what, 25 years ago, 20 years ago type time frame?
Well, the blacks and the motion still aren't half bad on a new one.
Yeah, that's fair. But the resolution was.
Yeah, and the convergence was
CRT
good.
upstairs.
I always enjoyed the workout.
I have a funny story about that too. But yeah, I still have a CRT for retro gaming. It's up in the bedroom.
Did you buy one of those favored Sonys, or which one did you buy?
Yeah, it's one of the Sonys. This is an ultra wide though. So.
Do you end up using it, or was it kind of a love project that just never got any love?
Both. So I have used it. I like it, but I'm not currently using it very much because that room got kind of destroyed in the process of getting the basement done. It will see another day.
Dustin, which projector do you have? I saw this comment, but I don't know what the comparison was.
Oh, real quick. Even going to the lower level laser projectors at AMC's, there's a huge drop off from like the IMAX and Dolby cinemas in comparison to the regular lasers. Not that like they're in like an SDR format, which helps tremendously, but the like you want to talk about pixel grid and bad motion, those projectors are all of the things you hate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then bad contrast to boot. Yeah. Okay, we're getting to the very end of the questions here. I'm scrolling down to the last few. I didn't have any more starred, just trying to catch up on the live stuff. And if you guys don't have anything else, we can call it an evening if we get to that point. Anything else you'd like to discuss as I'm continuing to go through this?
Go watch K-pop Demon Hunters. It's awesome.
And Cowboy Bebop, if you haven't.
Yeah.
Like Ryan was saying, the marathon, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, there's something to be said for one. Like some people, everybody has a different opinion about whether or not you want like a dedicated home theater or you want like a general space. And I'm kind of glad I went the dedicated home theater route, in so much as it's weird, and you and I have talked about this before, Grant. I think it's much better about forcing people to experience what's in front of them. It's like I'm not saying somebody won't pull out their phone if they come to my theater,
Hmm.
but if it's just like a lounge living room kind of environment or whatever, like the respect for the art form can't help go down a little bit, if that makes sense,
Hmm.
right? And so
Absolutely.
I'm nostalgic and a little bit romantic about the idea of cinema and the art of storytelling. So that's why I'm very patient. Like, I've been married to my wife for over 20 years, and I was waiting for a good time to, like, spring this one on her. I was like, all right, I think she can put up with something like this, and we're definitely not going to watch it in the bedroom before we fall asleep, kind of thing. Like, and everybody's like this about something. For me, it's this TV show from way back when, but somebody else will have that thing, and it's like, the other person will watch it and they'll enjoy it, but they'll probably never mean as much to them as it does to you. But you want to give it as good a shot as it can possibly get, so they can
Sure.
pick up on as many nuances as they can.
For sure.
Sure. And when you're, when you have a dedicated theater, there's something that happens to the second you just step in the door, and all of a sudden you're in a different space, and it's for one thing,
Hmm.
and you feel different. It sounds different. The picture's bigger. Everything is grander, and it's a lot harder to find distractions. It's a lot harder to kind of be that rude guy who's on his phone the whole time. You know, I agree. You are much more likely to be pulled into the content, and even if you're kind of that guy who is distracted a lot of times, you're probably much more likely to just stick with it, and I think more likely to appreciate the art, the storytelling, and everything else, like you were saying. I think it does matter.
Yeah.
Good points.
And I'm encouraged. My wife literally wants to have some friends over for a full day LOTR, Lord of the Rings marathon. Her idea.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah.
Which, if you've met my wife, you'd be like, "Oh, really? That's surprising." so I'm getting there.
That's
It just
awesome.
takes time.
Very cool. So Piper Boy says something I hadn't really heard, I don't think, before, where he's talking about doesn't always have the best version of the movies. I thought it was always at least like the best that they had on disc, but he said Tomorrow War was in 5.1 and not Atmos. So I guess I'm learning something here.
And I have seen other people talk about stuff like this, especially on ABS. Reach out to their customer support, and sometimes they will go and fix whatever's wrong
Yeah,
to get the better version.
because I think there was even once a Chris Deering and David Harper little scuffle over what they were seeing on a movie, and it turns out it was because Kaleidoscope was swapping out the movies with different nit grades, even that you might not necessarily catch on the first time through. So that's always interesting.
I will
So
say that because I'm in that mode of do I want to get Kaleidoscape or not. I have the app on my phone, and anytime I want to look up like a movie that I want to see, especially like older stuff that 20 years old plus, I'll see if it's on there, and I've been more disappointed than I've been excited, which is disappointing.
Yeah, so and that's actually funny you mentioned that, because I think about them once in a while too. Like, literally, I'm going to bring it up again with the Cowboy Bebop marathon, the official releases of that, like on the discs and stuff like that. And I didn't even check to see if it's in the Kaleidoscape store. I'd be surprised if it was any different. The subtitles that they have for it are literal translations of the Japanese only. But for that particular series, it's even by the director himself, who's from Japan, is like the English dub actually is the better of the two, especially how westernized the content is in it, and it works really well. But the subtitles are the literal Japanese translation. And my wife my wife in particular likes to always have subtitles on, even if it's in English and she understands it, but they won't match what the English voice actors are saying. So I went and I found subtitles that some fan had done. They're called dub titles, right? So it matches the English dubbing of it. And so I went and I found all of them for all the episodes we watched, and I added it to J River, and we played that back. And in addition to that, I talked about earlier how I put in, some songs from the movie or from the TV show before it started, and during an intermission that I put in for fun. I can't do that on Kscape. None of that stuff I can.
Ryan, I saw you answered this question in the comments a little bit. Do you want to just summarize what you said?
Sure. So, a darker screen to lower the black floor. The only issue with using a darker screen to lower the black floor is it doesn't move the scale on just one end, right? Like, so yes, it does technically lower the black floor and the perceived black floor, but it also lowers the highest possible white. So the whole scale, instead of the black going down here and the white staying there, the whole thing just shifts this way. And the only situation where you would really want to consider a darker screen is if you have an ambient light situation that's always going to have some ambient light. It will help with what's called perceived contrast, where if you throw a ton of light at it and it's got sort of, a slightly, a little bit gray screen, that'll help with the perceived blacks that you're icing. But especially in a dedicated environment, that wouldn't necessarily be recommended.
Yeah, I mean the Pixel Pusher 15 and Sir Master on the forums, AVS forum, both have kind of just spoke out and said, really, when you put a black screen up there, you're just lowering your overall brightness of the image.
Yeah,
you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and there's not really a net advantage on most of their
I do
experience.
wonder how that would work with your situation, Dawson.
I don't have any experience with black screens, not one iota of it, so I can't answer it subjectively speaking, but I trust those guys to have experienced what they've experienced and relay what they experienced. So yeah. There's also the question, Tim, with the QL7000 or the QL3000 about running a filter on it and just, having an advantage there. Like if I just ran an ND2 filter that does 50% light cut, I would still be brighter than the LS12000, and I would have better contrast than the LS12000. Now, at that point, it's not that different from the LS12000, but there still is an advantage. So you could do that too. You, instead of being 3001 contrast, you have 6001 contrast. Instead of being 6000 lumens, you'd be 3000 lumens. That type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that'd just be with a straight ND2 filter. I have one. I mean, I haven't even tried it yet. I used it on the LS12000 for certain content because it made my contrast better, JVC-esque on certain content that was really dark, that I wanted that darker contrast. All right.
Get on it, boy. You got a new topic waiting for us.
I plan to test it. I got to put some little Velcro strips on the QL3000 to hold it, and that will be that.
Yeah.
I think we're going to end this podcast in the next couple minutes here. I think we all have kind of a day tomorrow, and Grant especially, so we're going to give him that opportunity. Did you see anything in the comments, guys? I haven't even read all the way to the end. I'm mostly there. Is there something I missed that we want to talk for the last couple minutes?
I didn't see a lot of questions per se. Actually, a healthy chat back and forth between everybody, though. Just more observational type stuff. So,
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, very good. It's been a
Good
fun
stream.
stream, guys. Nice talking to you all, and thanks for coming on this weekend. Is Sheldon hosting next round, I think, or is it who's hosting the next round for our movie night?
I thought Sheldon was the last one who threw a date out, but I'm almost positive.
Okay.
Sheldon.
So,
okay, very good. All right, well, I'll see you then whenever that comes around.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Yep.
Hey,
have a
guys.
good night.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.